On September 4, 2024, a mass shooting at Apalachee High School in Georgia claimed the lives of 4 people, students Mason Schermerhorn and Christian Angulo, and teachers Richard Aspinwall and Christina Aramy, while 9 others were injured. The tragedy shocked the nation and devastated the Apalachee community. Prosecutors alleged that 14-year-old Colt Gray carried out the attack after planning it in advance. His father, Colt Gray, was separately prosecuted for providing the firearm used in the shooting, despite earlier warning signs about his son's access to weapons and behavior. In July 2026, Colt Gray pleaded guilty to all 55 criminal charges.
Would you please raise your right hand? You solemnly swear affirm the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated and introduce yourself to the court.
My name is Kevin Richards. Last name is spelled Richards.
And Dr. Richards, what kind of profession do you have right now?
I'm a forensic psychologist.
Okay.
Can I get you
As a
to...
forensic psychologist...
I'm sorry, let me get you to pull that mic down. Yeah, yes, sir.
Is that better?
Yes, sir, thank you.
And as a forensic psychologist, currently where do you work?
I'm in private practice. I have a private practice called Forensic Specialty Group in Marietta.
And how long have you been there?
Full-time, I've been doing that since 2007. I actually started the practice in 2002 as kind of a side hustle when I was working for the state.
And prior to 2002, did you work as a psychologist?
I did. I've been working as a psychologist since 1991.
And what kind of work did you do prior to 2002?
Before I went into private practice full-time, I was working at Northwest Georgia Regional Hospital in Rome. It's since closed, but I was on the, I did forensic evaluations out of that hospital. Prior to that, I worked at Clifton T. Perkins Hospital Center in Maryland, which is the state of Maryland's maximum security hospital. And there was a brief time in between then when I worked at Atlanta Regional in Decatur for about 7 months.
What kind of educational background do you have to be a psychologist?
You have to have a doctoral degree. I have a PhD from the University of South Florida. I got that in 1991 after completing the requirements and a 1-year pre-doctoral internship at the University of Minnesota. I also got a master's from USF in 89, and before that a bachelor's from a small school in Connecticut called Fairfield University in 1985.
Do you have license in Georgia as a psychologist?
I do, yeah. I'm licensed in, I think, 5 states right now.
Do you have any other state licenses?
Yes, I'm licensed also in North Carolina, Wisconsin, New Mexico, and Alaska.
Do you have any certifications beyond that?
I'm board certified in forensic psychology by the American Board of Forensic Psychology.
Okay. And prior to working as a forensic psychologist, you had just described some of the jobs that you had. Were you also working as a clinical psychologist?
I have at times. My career's been primarily forensic, but all forensic psychologists are clinical psychologists first, and then they specialize. So my degree is in clinical psychology. I developed this specialty in forensic psychology after I got my doctoral degree.
Are you currently involved with any professional organizations?
I'm involved with the American Academy of Forensic Psychology. I belong to APA and a number of other professional organizations that are kind of involved in the kind of work that I do.
Have you worked in any consulting capacities?
I have. I do a fair bit of consulting now. I consult with the various branches of the military when they have courts martial. I also do a fair bit of file case reviews for attorneys.
Have you worked in any hospitals or regional facilities?
Well, just the 2 I mentioned, well, 3 I mentioned, Clifton T. Perkins in Maryland, and then Atlanta Regional in Decatur, and then Northwest Regional when it was open up in Rome.
And during your term as a forensic psychologist, have you handled any kind of training for psychology or non-psychology experts in the field of forensics?
Yeah, for a while when I was in Maryland, I was on the adjunct faculty at American University in the PhD program. I used to teach their PhD students forensic psychology and a variety of other things. I don't have any academic appointments now, but I do a fair bit of training for attorneys and students and interns and other psychologists.
And have you had any contribution to publications?
Not very much, honestly. I'm not an academic. I've had a practice career, so.
Have you testified as an expert before?
I have.
And can you give us an idea of how many cases?
I'm close to 300, probably.
Okay. And have they been just in the state of Georgia or in other places?
I know they've been in Georgia, where else? New Mexico, Arizona, Wyoming, and then all over the world on military bases, Korea, Japan, Germany.
I'm going to hand you a copy of the document that I've marked as D2, and I'm going to ask if you can identify that for me.
Sure. Yes, that's a copy of my CD.
Did you contribute or compose that CD?
Yeah, I wrote it.
And looking over it, have there been any alterations since you drafted that?
Got a couple of additional trainings, but otherwise, no.
Is that the copy of the CD that you have provided for me?
Yes,
To distribute to the other parties?
that's correct.
Judge, at this time, I'd like to tender D2 in to the record as evidence.
State, no objection. It's admitted.
Thank you, Judge. You're here testifying on a case with Colt Gray. How did you become involved with that case?
I got involved when his original attorney, Mr. Kraft, from the Public Defender's Office, contacted me and asked me if I would be willing to do an evaluation.
And how long ago was that?
A year and a half, 2 years ago? No, it was about a year and a half ago, I'm guessing.
At that time, did he provide you with evidence or materials to look through?
He did. He sent me a hard drive that had essentially, I think, the entire case file on it.
And what kinds of information was on that?
Oh gosh, there was a lot of police documentation, there was interviews, there was DFACS records, there was school records, body camera video from law enforcement. I mean, there was a lot.
Was the request done for a full forensic psychological evaluation?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, a forensic psychological evaluation.
Well, for a forensic evaluation, Mr. Kraft was particularly interested in looking at the case in light of the Miller v. Alabama decision about sentencing juveniles to life without parole.
Talk a little bit about the difference between a clinical psychologist operation and forensic.
Well, forensic psychologists focus on application of clinical principles to questions of law. So, as I noted earlier, all forensic psychologists are clinical psychologists first, and then they specialize in application of clinical psychological principles to legal questions. It's similar to physicians. Once you graduate med school, you're a doctor, but until you do a residency and specialize, you can't be a surgeon or a pediatrician or something like that.
So what kind of investigation techniques and methodologies do you use?
I do quite a bit of interviewing. I do a lot of case review, looking at evidence. If there are prior records, prior evaluations, I look at that. If there are collateral sources that I can talk to and interview, I talk to those people. I do psychological testing.
Judge, at this time, I would like to tender Kevin Richards as an expert in forensic psychology and clinical psychology based on his education, his experience, and the methodologies that he uses in his work.
Mr. Smith? No objection. All right, he'll be admitted as an expert.
Thank you, Judge. Now, when you first entered the case, did you immediately go to interview Colt, or did you do some background work?
I did a little bit of review, but I did go to see him fairly soon after Mr. Kraft contacted me. I don't know the exact timeline. I know it wasn't very long.
Okay. And in that early interview, can you tell us what your impressions were from that beginning?
I thought he was kind of an odd kid. When he first started the interview, he had wanted to put his arms inside his sweatshirt because he said he liked the way that felt better. His affect was a little bit odd and flat, but otherwise, there was nothing terribly remarkable. He was cooperative. He didn't give me a bad time. He answered my questions, cooperated with the testing that I did.
Did you interview him subsequent to that?
I did. I interviewed him a total of 4 times, I think for a total of about 15 hours.
And did you interview any other collateral sources?
Yeah, I talked to his mom. I talked to her twice, and it totaled about 3 hours back in May of this year.
Okay. After that review and investigation, did you also review the file that was given to you by Mr. Kraft, was it?
It was Mr. Kraft that sent me the hard drive. Yes, I went through substantially, I think I looked at pretty much everything that was on. It was a vast amount of information, and there was a lot of things that weren't really relevant, like, for example, watching every single body camera video for officers that responded on the day of the incident wasn't really relevant to what I was doing, but there was a lot of things in the hard drive that were.
As a result of your investigation, did you generate a report?
I did.
I'm going to hand you what I've marked by identification purposes D1 and ask you if you could identify that.
Sure. Sorry, I just want to make sure all the pages are here. Yes, this looks like a copy of the report that I wrote.
As we go through some of these issues, I'll allow you to refer to it, but please don't read directly from it.
Okay.
For the testimony. Okay. Going back to your initial interview with Colt, did you immediately jump into covering the facts of the event, or how did that work out with you?
No, typically when I do an interview, I start with easy questions, like what's your birthday, where are you from, where'd you grow up, you know. And so a lot of the first interview was talking a lot about his history, where he lived, where he was born, you know, who his mom and dad were, whether he had siblings, that kind of thing. Just getting kind of basic background information.
And in that background information, did he cover his family life, the circumstances that happened between his parents, his brother and sister?
He did.
Okay. Some of those issues that came up when he was young, can you enlighten us as to what you think may be important in his development?
There was a lot of moving around, a lot of chaos. There was the family moved in a really large number of times. There were financial problems. There were issues with neglect, lack of money, lack of moving into places that didn't have any furniture, having utilities shut off, not always having food in the house, those kinds of things. There was reports of some abuse by the dad. I think the dad was using drugs. Eventually, both parents were using drugs, which also had a detrimental effect on the well-being in the family. So it was pretty chaotic. There was a lot of, I think, abuse and a fair bit of kind of neglect and just a lot of transition and chaos.
And where was Colt positioned in the family?
He's the oldest of three. He's got a younger sister named Jenny and a little brother named Coley. I think Jenny's 15 now. I think Coley's 12.
When he was going into his background, did he describe anything to you that raised special red flags, like what has perceptions of the violence that he may have seen in his development?
I mean, he talked about the stuff between him and his dad. I think there was a lot of chaos between the parents as well. I'm not sure if that was physical. I think maybe it was at times, but I think a lot of it was a lot of screaming and yelling.
Did he give you an indication of whether he was closer to his mom or his dad, or did he?
I think he had complaints about both of them at different times. I would say he probably had a closer relationship with his mom than he did with his dad.
And how did any of this chaos that you were referring to in constant moving, how did any of that affect his feeling of stability in family?
I think he's, you know, he already started out as, like I said, kind of an unusual kid, and I think all of the chaos and so forth led to him. What it really led to him being was really isolated. A lot of times his mom and dad weren't putting him in school. They didn't take him to socialize. He didn't hang out with other kids. Didn't have like a normal childhood where he had friends and things to do. They were always moving, and like I said, he wasn't in school a fair bit of the time, and it kind of drove him into a sort of an isolated position, at which point I think he discovered the computer, and then that's kind of where that whole situation took off.
Did he give you an understanding of how financial problems came about with the family?
He said it was spending money on drugs and irresponsible purchases, things that couldn't be afforded, and then moving into houses and apartments that couldn't afford and getting evicted, instead of spending the money on taking care of the family, buying trucks and boats and RVs and stuff like that. Just a lot of really irresponsible behavior with money.
Did he tell you how many schools he attended?
I don't recall exactly. It was inconsistent because sometimes he was in school and sometimes he wasn't. I think there was an entire year where they just didn't even bother to register him. So,
was there any extended family that he was involved with?
It seems like he had a pretty good relationship with his grandma, Miss Polhamus, Debbie.
And is that maternal or paternal?
I think that's Marcy is his mom. I think that's Marcy's mom.
Do you know how much contact he had with her during this time?
I think he was in and out of her home at various times. She would take him. I know Defects was involved with the family at times, and like I said, both of the parents were having issues with drugs and financial problems and so forth. And so I think when those things would get bad, I think there were times when Debbie stepped in. I think the kids lived with Debbie at various times.
Did he have a chance to go down and stay with her much?
Again, we didn't discuss specifically, but it was clear he spent a fair bit of time with his grandma.
Obviously, some of this time occurred during COVID. How did that impact?
I think it impacted like everybody else. I think he was already a kid who was pretty isolated, and COVID didn't help that for any of us. And so I think the idea that stuck at home, not going to school, locked down, I think it just kind of reinforced the level of sort of isolation and loneliness.
Now, you had indicated that you got involved a lot with the computer. Did he tell you any direction or any interests he had with the computer?
I mean, most of his social life was on the computer. He was a gamer. He played online video games, but he was also spending a lot of time on communication platforms, specifically on Discord, which is a place you can go to play games, but also chat with people, look for people with similar interests. I think he spent time on Reddit, and then eventually kind of got really focused on this, what they call the true crime community, which is a group of mostly teens and adolescents that are focused on true crime, primarily focused on people that do mass shootings. I mean, to the point of being obsessed.
So in the context of social development, how does that kind of isolation impact the growth of a child going through the developmental stage?
Well, I think what happens is that you end up, everybody's impacted by the experiences that they have when they're growing up. And I think if you're really isolated, those kind of normal social developmental, experiences that people have, you're deprived of those. And when you kind of go into the online world, there's fraught with problems. So if you're carrying on your social life or carrying on your, their substitute for a social life online, it can lead you into some dark places.
During that time that he was getting involved with the true crime community, did he indicate to you he had any fixation on any certain types of crimes?
It was primarily on school shootings, although he was focused on a fellow named Holmes, who was the individual who did the shooting in the Aurora, Colorado movie theater. That wasn't a school shooting. It was a mass shooting, but it wasn't at a school. He initially, I think, was focused on Adam Lanza, who is the person that did the school shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary up in Connecticut, and then ultimately became really focused on Nicholas Cruz, who is the person who did the school shooting at Parkland, at the high school, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And that was the one I think he was most focused on, although he said he was more focused on Holmes just prior to the shooting.
And as he was getting into this true crime community, did he impart the information to you that gave you red flags about his mental health?
Well, I mean, he was talking a lot about how he kind of related to these people, how he could, felt like they had similar histories. I kind of asked him what drew him to it, and he said, well, Nicholas Cruz was a lonely guy, and he had a bad family life, and, he was depressed, and he thought about killing himself, and I had all those things too, and so I felt like I could relate to him, and so it kind of, again, it eventually kind of turned into an obsession, but in terms of his mental health, I think it was, he became more isolated, more focused on the computer, and consequently, in parallel, his ability to kind of have relationships and interactions with people outside of the online world became impaired to the point where he even said, if I went out and tried to have interactions with people, it would be really hard. I just have panic attacks because I've been so focused on online. And it was clear by the time the shooting happened that his entire life basically was online. He didn't have any friends outside. He wasn't, I don't think, going to school very much. He mentioned knowing some kids at school, but he hadn't been at Apalachee very long. So there wasn't really anything going on for him aside from his intense focus on these online relationships, and these online relationships were in the true crime community, which is a pretty dysfunctional place.
At what point did he indicate to you he began having suicidal ideations?
That's been going on for a while. It's hard to know exactly when. I think it's waxed and waned over time. He's dealt with depression and anxiety, and I think at times, depending on circumstances in his life, getting worse or better, he would think about hurting himself or killing himself. He also did some non-lethal self-harming behavior, cutting himself. There was an instance he said he cut himself once with a butter knife. He had some kind of he described it almost like a surgical tool that he used to cut his arms with. So there was that as well. I don't think he ever made an actual suicide attempt, but he thought about it and became feeling like he wanted to kill himself, but never actually tried.
Are you familiar enough with gamers and TCC community to give us an idea as to whether that's a normal component, or is that something that was unique to him?
Well, I learned quite a bit about the true crime community just working on this case. But that seems those are the kids that are in there. There are kids who have issues, there are kids that have problems, there are kids that have mental illnesses, there are kids that are disaffected, lonely, suicide and self-harm are themes that come up a lot. This obsession, fixation on people who have done these horrible crimes comes up quite a bit. And so these are the people that are there. That's who you're interacting with when you're in that community, are people that have a similar kind of fixation and also have some, there were two people, I think I read about 50,000 messages, Discord messages between him and primarily two young women, and the relationship was extraordinarily dysfunctional.
And as you were going through your investigation, you indicated you interviewed some other family members.
Yeah, just mom.
Okay. What kinds of information did she give you about his young development?
It was kind of parallel to what he said. She fleshed it out a little bit more, obviously, because she was able to provide information about him when he was very young, information that Colt wouldn't have had, kind of about his, perinatal development, meeting developmental milestones, what he was like as a baby, what he was like as a toddler and a young kid. And so that was helpful. In terms of the way that the family life progressed, I think, Mom clearly has a bias toward. She has her own way of seeing things. She has a tendency to blame most things on the dad. And I'm not saying he's without any faults, but that's kind of was her angle. But she did provide quite a lot of information, kind of about the family moving and the financial problems. She was pretty forthcoming about her own issues with drugs and dad's issues with drugs, and how things just weren't getting taken care of properly with the kids.
Did he ever give you any indication that the family had been involved with the Department of Family and Children's Services at any point?
Yeah, I think there were various times when DFACS was involved. I know there was when his mother got involved in drugs, I think DFACS got involved then. I know they got involved right after the shooting as well, but I know there's been involvement. There were records that I got that showed that there had been contact with DFACS over issues with this family. Not sending the kids to school, not taking care of the kids, being neglectful. I remember specifically reading some records about truancy, about how he just wasn't showing up. I'm not even sure he was registered.
And to your knowledge, did he ever spend any time in foster care?
Foster care, I don't recall. I know he was with his grandma a fair bit. I don't know that he was ever in any foster homes.
Okay. In the months, or actually let's say weeks before the shooting, as you reviewed the records and the discovery that was given to you by Mr. Kraft, did you notice an increase in his statements and activities regarding suicidal ideations or related to acts like the shooting?
He was talking to a young woman named Amanda, who went by Mandy, and he wasn't saying anything specifically about doing a shooting. They talked about school shootings a lot. Both of them were obsessed in a very dysfunctional way with Nicholas Cruz, but he was making statements to the fact that he was paranoid, that he felt suicidal, that he felt he was hurting himself, but he was also making kind of ominous statements about how something was going to happen soon. It was going to happen on September 4th, and I think Ms. Coots Mandy had an inkling that that's what he was talking about, but he never specifically said it, but he did say that something big is going to happen on the 4th, and it was almost like a countdown in their messages as that was approaching.
And did you get any indication that he had reached out to his family for help on the suicidal ideations?
It didn't seem like it.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry, you said did or didn't?
I said didn't seem like, I know he made statements to the effect that he was telling his dad that he needed help, and when I talked to Mom said she noticed around the time not long before that he was having more panic attacks, more anxiety, that his level of paranoia maybe was a little bit worse. So I'm mistaken, actually. Yeah, he did talk about that, and evidently there was some effort afoot to get him into a clinic. I had some messages, they were basically phone messages between Colt's dad and a mental health facility trying to set up an appointment for him, but they never took him to an ER or a hospital or anything like that. It was trying to get outpatient treatment.
Okay, so to your understanding, no one ever called a crisis mental health center for him?
Not that I'm aware of. His mom mentioned when I spoke with her that she felt like he needed to go to an inpatient facility, but nobody ever took him to one, and nobody ever took him to an ER.
Okay. And at the time of the shooting occurred, I'll go back to something else for just a moment. In your conversations with his mom, did she indicate to you that she had given him any kind of medication?
Yeah, she started giving him Zoloft. She had a prescription for Zoloft. Colt did not have a prescription for Zoloft. And what she was doing was taking pills and breaking them up and giving him pieces of them. So there was no prescription, and it's unclear what kind of dose he was getting. Estimated, I think they were 100 milligram or 200 milligram pills she was breaking up, and she was giving him about a fourth of them at a time. But again, when you break them, that's not the way you're supposed to take Zoloft. But that's how he was getting it. It was from his mom.
Did he describe how it was affecting you?
He said it made him feel a little bit racy, a little bit wound up.
Is that kind of like the opposite effect of what it's supposed to have?
Some people do have experienced a little bit of activation with SSRIs. I mean, I'm not an MD, but I've been around them a bunch. Some people do get a little bit of activation, but they also help with anxiety and depression. I think he said he felt maybe a little bit better, but they made him feel kind of racy and sped up.
How intense at that time was his depression?
I think it was pretty severe. I mean, it waxed and waned. I think it was pretty severe. I think at the time of the shooting, the anxiety and paranoia were probably prominent, although the depression was always kind of there. And the thoughts about hurting or killing himself were always kind of there. But I think around the time of the shooting, it was primarily the anxiety that was prominent.
What kinds of characteristics did his paranoia take on?
He talked about being afraid that there were plots against him. He talked about believing that people were talking about him, like if he was out in public, he'd see people talking. It's called an idea of reference, when you believe that seeing something happening in public refers to you. If you see two people talking to one another and you think they're talking about you. He talked about believing that the teachers were plotting against him. He mentioned this to his mom and also to Mandy, and so it was that kind of thing. He also had this idea that somehow his computer had been, he used the word infiltrated. He wasn't sure who did it, but he kept changing his usernames, and he was storing information, I think, on like little SD drives like you use with a camera, and he was taking those out and destroying them, breaking them up, because he was afraid. He never was able to tell me who he thought was doing it or why, but it felt like somebody was probably keeping track of him. He said some more, I think, more outlandish things that I'm not sure, about cars going by the house and seeing people. I'm not sure how much of that was, maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, but I did believe he used to kind of conflate his paranoia and anxiety. He was real anxious, but he was worrying about things, and so there was an element of paranoia that he used to kind of conflate with the anxiety, and the two of them kind of coexisted like that. So.
And those kinds of things that can impair someone's judgment if they're going through those episodes.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if somebody believes that there are, forces marshaling against them, that can certainly impact the way that they carry on their life. Certainly he was doing certain things in response to the beliefs that he had, like destroying the hard drives or the SD cards and changing his usernames. But I don't think he was really doing, other things in the service of them.
Now, you made a reference to his thinking the teachers were against him. Was that teachers at his current school or his older school?
The teachers at his current school.
Were you familiar with the circumstances that took place when he was in Jacksontown?
I'm not sure specifically what you mean.
When the FBI came out to investigate?
Yes. Yeah, I was aware that there was a message, I think, that got flagged on Discord about somebody making a statement about doing a school shooting, and law enforcement showed up at the house because they were able to trace they were able to look at the account, the email associated with the account, trace the email to him, and so they went and interviewed him about whether he had made this threat.
Did you listen to Inspector Smith's interview of Colt when he was arrested?
There were two of them. There was one at the school and there was one at CID, and I listened to both of them.
And particularly the one at the school, what were your initial impressions when you read that?
He was pretty hysterical. That was the main thing.
Okay. At any point, did he try to deny that he did anything?
No, he didn't.
When he was taken into RYDC, did they do any checkups or any assessments on him to determine if there were any psychological or physical issues?
I think they do that with most kids, but what I learned when I was talking with him is that he was having these symptoms. He was telling me about this paranoia and stuff that he was having, and then I asked him, well, what do the mental health people think about it? And he said, well, I haven't told them. And so I suggested that maybe being more forthright about these things, if they were going on, would be a good idea. And then I think he started talking more to the staff about it. I also alerted his attorney.
Did you have access to any of the records from the BJJ?
Not until just a few days ago.
Did you get a chance to review them?
Yeah, there was a lot, but yeah, I reviewed them.
What was your understanding of his initial treatment plan?
Initial treatment?
When he was in RYDC?
Okay. I think it changed over time. He was reporting some paranoid ideation that was continuing, worrying about other kids in the RYDC, worrying about the staff, worrying about the cooks putting stuff in his food. And I think at one time they diagnosed him with something called schizoaffective disorder, which is a schizophrenia spectrum disorder. He said they did. I didn't find evidence of that in the records. But they were treating him with antipsychotic medication and also an antidepressant medication. They're actually giving him Zoloft, which is what his mom was giving him. They started him on an antipsychotic called quetiapine, but evidently he had some side effects, so they changed him to one called olanzapine or Zyprexa, which he remained. I think he's still on it now, and the Zoloft.
Do you recall what their determination of his diagnosis was?
Yeah, they diagnosed him with a mood disorder, depression with psychotic features. They diagnosed him with conduct disorder. They diagnosed him with an unspecified personality disorder, and they diagnosed him with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder.
What's unspecified personality disorder?
It basically means that you think somebody has a personality disorder, but personality, there's a variety in the DSM, which is a diagnostic manual. There's a number of specific personality disorders. A personality disorder is a dysfunctional pattern of interpersonal behavior that's kind of persistent across time and situations. They tend to develop in adolescence and early adulthood, and they can manifest in various different ways. And if you're not really sure, if you think the person probably has a personality disorder, has dysfunctional interpersonal functioning that impairs their relationships, you can diagnose them with a personality disorder unspecified, which means you're not sure whether it's a narcissistic or borderline or some other specific personality disorder.
Did you find substantiation for that in your work?
No, well, I mean, 14, 15 is really too young to diagnose a personality disorder. If you're talking about something that develops in, late adolescence and early adulthood, he hadn't even really gotten there yet. And, one of the things about kids in adolescence is that their character and their personalities are not fully formed. They're developing. They're works in progress. Their brains are still developing. Their personalities are still developing. And so to find evidence of a personality disorder, you have to have something that you observe kind of onsetting in late adolescence and early adulthood, carrying on into adulthood and impacting a person's ability to have normal functional interpersonal relationships, but it has to be across time and situations. It can't be limited to one particular relationship or one particular situation. And when you're 14, 15 years old, it's really just too young to diagnose a personality disorder, in my opinion.
What about the schizoaffective disorder?
Well, I don't think he has schizoaffective disorder. Schizoaffective disorder is a schizophrenia spectrum disorder. If you want to think of it in a simple way, if you have schizophrenia and you have either bipolar disorder and depression at the same time, that's what schizoaffective disorder is. So a person has what we call the main criteria for schizophrenia, which is psychotic symptoms, hallucinations, delusions, disorganized behavior, that kind of thing, at the same time that they're having either a manic episode or a major depressive episode.
And I believe you said the diagnosis also included conduct disorder?
Correct.
What are the components of that?
So conduct disorder, that changed in the DSM-5. It used to be diagnosed in a different way. There's basically a list of 15 kind of dysfunctional behaviors that kids can manifest. And if you have 3 of them, I think in a 12-month period, then you can get diagnosed with conduct disorder. There are also specifiers about your kind of emotional function. If there's a more kind of characterological developing pattern of these kinds of behaviors that are, again, occurring across time and situation, like personality disorder would later, then you can get diagnosed with, I think it's called with like limited emotional function or something like that.
What kinds of behaviors did he exhibit that would qualify in the context?
Well, I honestly didn't find a lot. I mean, there was obviously the main one that landed him in the RYDC, but while he was in the RYDC, actually all of the behavior management plans were directed at protecting him from being victimized or preventing him from hurting himself. There was no indication there was ever any kind of aggressive behavior or persistent rule-breaking behavior that was occurring. So, aside from, and also prior to, being arrested for the shooting, there wasn't really a pattern of antisocial kind of conduct disorder behavior that was documented anywhere.
Do you recall having looked at pictures from his second interview with Detective Smith?
Yeah, I had an issue with getting the videos to play right, so I was able to see them interacting, but I couldn't hear them, so then I got the audio files and listened to the audio files.
Okay. And was there anything noticeable about his physical state, his arm particularly? Did you notice that there was a photograph of him with cuts or marks on his arm?
I remember because I remember them mentioning and photographing them. And he told me he'd been cutting himself with some kind of a thing with a blade on it.
Okay. Is that one of the self-harm actions that he engages in?
Yeah, that was what he was, there was that and the incident with the butter knife that he told me about. I don't know if there were others. And there was someone, he was in the RY as well, breaking up buttons off polo shirts and then making scratches. But you can really kind of only scratch yourself superficially, but still it was brought to the staff's attention. It didn't require any treatment aside from cleaning, but it was problematic. It was concerning because he was hurting himself on purpose.
From your review of the records and your interviews with him, did you notice a difference in him when he was on medication and when he wasn't?
In terms of kind of just normal day-to-day interaction, I would say not particularly. He seemed pretty depressed and anxious most of the time when I was talking to him. He said that the medication helped some with the paranoia, but he was still talking about being worried about people. But his presentation was always kind of similar. I mean, his affect doesn't vary a whole lot. He's kind of flat when you speak with him. So that didn't really change very much.
The medical records commented on a transition plan. Can you tell us your understanding of the transition plan at all?
Well, I think they were transferring him from one facility to another one, and so what they did was kind of did a summary of all of the mental health interventions that had been done, all of the times he had been on, close observations or some other kind of observation due to, risk of self-harm or risk of being victimized. There was also a problem list and, the diagnoses and also a mention of his medications. So it was pretty, in one page there was a ton of information kind of about what they had done, and that was for the benefit of the receiving facilities so that they were aware of what had been happening without having to, I think it was like 450 pages of records. You could get the gist of it by looking at the transfer summary.
And did they make any changes to his treatment plan when they transferred him?
Not that I'm aware of. I think he stayed on the same medications, so.
So today, would you anticipate that he's still being medicated?
I would assume so.
One of the issues that was raised was malingering. Can you tell us about malingering?
So malingering is basically exaggerating or faking a symptom, and it's a specific way because in malingering you're faking to avoid some other kind of consequence or to get some kind of secondary gain. So you're doing it for a reason. And what in forensic contexts, that's something we're always kind of have our ears perked up for, because people who are facing serious criminal charges sometimes have the motivation to try and manage that in a way that's dysfunctional. I know that there was some question about whether Colt was malingering his psychotic symptoms, and I actually was concerned about that as well.
And do you know of any specific steps that were taken to treat his PTSD?
Specific steps, I'm not aware. I mean, he was given the Zoloft. I think he was in some group psychotherapies. I think they had him in a dialectical behavior therapy. I don't think they had him in one of the empirically supported PTSD treatments, but I could be mistaken about that. I know they were aware and addressing it.
And would trauma-informed therapy be beneficial to somebody with PTSD?
Yes.
Do we know if that was ever provided or available at LLEC?
I can't say definitively, honestly.
Okay. When you were doing your assessments, did you run any tests with regard to his total functioning, cognitive, other psychosocial functions?
I gave an IQ test, and I also did a personality test called the Minnesota Multiphasic. That's spelled MULTIPHASIC personality inventory, the adolescent version that's been restructured. So it's the MMPI-A-RF. And then also another one called the Trauma Symptom Checklist for Children, or what we call the TSCC. And that's a measure that it gets at specifically at sequelae of trauma in kids and adolescents.
And following those tests, did you come up with your own probable diagnostic direction for him?
I don't think I gave him a specific diagnosis. What I talked about mostly were kind of the phenomenology, the things I was observing, because a specific diagnosis isn't as helpful as kind of describing what you're seeing in forensic evaluations, at least. I did want to rule out whether there was any kind of intellectual functioning deficit, and there's not. His IQ is average. When I did the personality testing, the first time it was invalid because he was what we call over-reporting meaning he was just kind of endorsing everything willy-nilly. And then I went back and gave it to him again and instructed him to be more careful and thoughtful and to not just endorse everything and to really think about what was going on with him. The second time, there was still some level of over-reporting, but not to the point that it invalidated the testing. And it was pretty consistent with what he was telling me. There was indications of mood problems, anxiety problems, problems with thinking, paranoia, persecutory ideas, suicidal ideation. Psychological tests are not like x-rays or blood tests. What they usually do is help us develop interpretive hypotheses for understanding people, and sometimes they help us corroborate things that we're observing or seeing on interview, and that's pretty much what the MMPI did. Colt never really talked about trauma, PTSD symptoms with me as PTSD symptoms. I would kind of ask him about, traumatic experiencing. Was he having flashbacks? Was he having dreams? And he said he had dreams about the school sometimes, and sometimes dreams about things that happened when he was younger. But the dreams about the school didn't involve the shooting incident. It was just him alone in the school wandering around. But he never really talked about the kind of, when you talk with people with PTSD, they talk about having flashbacks and dreams and traumatic re-experiencing, and they talk about trying to avoid things that remind them of the trauma and changes in their emotional functioning. And the diagnostic criteria are pretty complicated. He didn't talk about that, but on the TSCC, he endorsed a lot of trauma-related symptomatology, and it didn't appear as though there's validity checks in that test as well. It didn't appear as though he was manufacturing them, which I thought was kind of odd, because when I tried to talk to him about it, I wasn't getting much, but he was responding to it on the testing, and clearly the ROADC docs felt he had PTSD as well. Just the water. Yeah.
Did you give you any kind of indication of hypersensitivity to any of the sensory perceptions?
He did talk about that. Excuse me, sorry. Like I said, when I first met with him, that was the first thing we talked about. He asked if he could pull his arms inside of his sweatshirt and kind of hold his arms around him, because he said he felt more comfortable talking that way. He talked a lot about having issues with noises, particularly with textures, kind of sensory things. When I talked to his mom, she talked about this as well. She said when he was little, he didn't like people touching him, bathing him, washing his hair was a challenge, getting him a haircut was a challenge. Noises seemed to bother him, and I think that persisted. He had specific kinds of sheets and towels that he liked. He had little rituals that he did when he got out of the shower, like things laid out a certain way, and so that was the kind of thing that he related to me.
Did any of that give you an indication of any other kind of spectrum disorder that maybe?
Well, it made me wonder whether there was, an element of an autism spectrum disorder. Because those kinds of sensory integration issues are common in people that have autism spectrum disorders. And his interpersonal behavior was kind of odd, so it got me wondering or thinking about it. It was something I considered as I continued to talk to him.
Would that be something perhaps that would be good as a rule out and having a valid?
I suspect if he wanted to do a specific evaluation for an autism spectrum disorder, that would probably not be a bad idea. In the end, I didn't feel like, based on what I got from him and what I got from his mom, I felt like there was some elements. He certainly has some elements, particularly sensory type elements, and some interpersonal stuff. But in talking to his mom, she said that, when he would interact, he was capable of interacting. He didn't have the kind of interactive patterns that we see, particularly with people that have autism spectrum disorders. But, his interpersonal behavior was odd, and we don't have a great sample of it because most of it was online. So, to do an evaluation for that might be worthwhile. I ultimately didn't believe that he met diagnostic criteria, and that's what I put in my report.
And in your report on page 29, you talk about ACE factors. What are ACE factors?
So that stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. Years ago, the Kaiser Foundation and the I guess it was Health and Human Services did a big, CDC did a big study, and they looked at, was it between 1995 and 97, they looked at 17,000 people. And what they identified were a set of adverse childhood experiences, things that people could experience when they were in their developmental period that tended to be correlated with adverse outcomes when they got older. And some of these were psychological, psychiatric. There was increased levels of depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance abuse in people that had experienced these adverse experiences as children. But what they also found interesting was that there was kind of what we call a dose response characteristic, meaning the more of them there were, the worse the outcomes tended to be. They also studied a lot of kind of physical well-being outcomes, but when I look at these, I'm thinking more about the psychological ones. And certainly, he was exposed to a lot of these things, and the manifestations that he has psychologically in terms of his interpersonal function, his anxiety, depression, and so forth. It's not really surprising. I mean, they're not the only reason, but certainly not surprising. Growing up in an environment where he was exposed to a lot of adverse things, that he would develop depression, anxiety, and struggle interpersonally.
What is the concept called dose response? How does that relate to this?
It just means that the more of them there are, the worse the outcomes are likely to be.
And I think you said he had experienced most of that.
Most of them at one time or another. Yeah. The last one I think was an incarcerated parent. That's only been recently. That was when he was growing up.
How does all of this relate to his overall functioning around the time of the shooting?
Well, I think he was, basically he was a lonely, dysfunctional kid who was anxious, paranoid, depressed, and immersed in this highly dysfunctional world with these people that were obsessed with folks who had done school shootings. So his interpersonal behavior was very dysfunctional and kind of layered on with the psychological issues. He had just kind of disappeared into discord and disappeared into the true crime community, where he wasn't really having interactions or relationships with real people on the outside. I mean, there were real people online, but not real people on the outside.
And with the things that he went through, what would be the normal course of treatment if somebody were to seek treatment for?
Well, it would depend on the specific, kind of manifestations. I think with him, certainly symptomatically, you would try and address the depression, anxiety, any level of paranoia. You would want to try and do that to get some symptom relief with medication. But then, kind of intensive therapy. There are therapies that have been empirically derived to deal with those specific kinds of things. So doing that to try and work through those things or disentangle them, kind of, particularly with a young person, would be the way that we would go. Kind of do the symptom, address the symptoms, and then work on the interpersonal behavior, work on the coping skills, work on the ability to kind of have a normal life in the outside world, would be the things that would be the targets in treatment.
Given your interactions with him, would therapies have helped him?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, anytime a kid is struggling with the psychological, psychiatric problems, and you've got someone whose brain isn't fully developed, whose personality isn't very developed, who doesn't really know very much about the world at 14, who hasn't developed a mature set of coping skills, and then you kind of turn them loose in this dysfunctional environment with these things going on, and coming from a home where there was a lot of neglect and probably some abuse, and not really any kind of normal interpersonal contacts. It's not surprising that he kind of ended up the way that he did, and having had some kind of psychiatric, psychological intervention well before he was this happened, the shooting happened, would have absolutely been beneficial.
And you're talking about the development of 14-year-old teenagers growing up. Someone without the psychological burdens that he has, will they develop in a way that they can make more normal decisions?
I think, it's kind of, you think of it as, all teenagers, adolescents, young adults, the brains are still developing, and particularly the frontal lobe is developing. The frontal lobe is important because that's kind of where that controls decision-making, impulse control, anticipating consequences, making good decisions, planning courses of action, considering alternatives. All of that kind of stuff lives in the frontal lobes, and those keep developing into the 20s is what we know now. There was a big study done a number of years ago where it found kind of what we clinicians had known for years is that kind of cognitive development lags behind chronological development. And so, you take somebody who's a normal 14-year-old, they're still going to have all these issues. It's kind of the reason we see adolescents and kids and young adults do more dumb things than adults do. Part of that is because of the way that their brains are underdeveloped. And I think if you pile on, depression, anxiety, neglect, some abuse, some paranoia, that it's just going to exacerbate the situation. But even under the best of circumstances, the brain and the personality and the character are certainly not developed. They're not in anywhere near a final format at age 14.
During your conversations with him, did you speak directly about shooting the himself?
Yes.
Did he ever try to deny that he did?
No.
What was his response as you and you were talking about the victims and what the ramifications were?
Well, he said he felt terrible about the victims, and it was interesting. When he was interviewing with Investigator Smith, they talked quite a bit about that as well, and I think he even wrote some apology letters. I focused more on his own kind of functioning, trying to disentangle kind of what was going on with him at the time. But he certainly talked about the victims, and he talked about in this true crime community also, that one of the things he was interested in was not only the perpetrators but the victims. He said with the Parkland, I think Nicholas Cruz killed 17 people, something like that, and he said he was, was interested in their stories and what they were doing with their lives, but obviously more obsessed with the shooter himself.
And would you say that he was apologetic about it?
Pardon me?
Was he apologetic about it?
Yes. Well, certainly was when he was talking to Investigator Smith. I didn't try to elicit anything like that from him. I mean, I asked him how he felt about the thing, and he said he felt terrible. He felt terrible for what he did. He knew he, screwed up a lot of lives.
Based on the investigation, your interview with him, and understanding all the issues he's facing now psychologically, would he be able to improve with continued therapies, medications, treatment plan?
Yeah, I think so. Again, you're not talking about somebody who did this in their mid-20s, late 20s, or as an adult, when there could be characterological issues underlying that are kind of well developed. The personality is finished, the brain is finished, and sometimes if you end up in a situation with an older person where there's characterological issues that drive them to do things that are antisocial, there's sometimes not a lot you can do about that. I think when you're dealing with kids and adolescents, there's still some room before things are consolidated, before they're finished, before they're finished developing. You can intervene in a meaningful way to try and help them develop, more healthy coping skills or address some of those symptoms. So, yeah, sure.
You had indicated that Mr. Kraft asked you to do this before in conjunction with the Miller versus Alabama factors for sentencing you.
Right.
Did you reach any conclusions about that?
Well, they talk about incorrigibility and, irredeemable depravity, and I certainly didn't find evidence of that. He didn't appear to be on a really antisocial kind of vector. He wasn't a kid who was getting in trouble a lot. He wasn't a kid that had prior contacts with BJJ. He was doing all this weird stuff on the internet, but it wasn't, antisocial stuff. It wasn't kind of comic disordered stuff. And so what I saw mostly with him were things developmentally where, his interpersonal skills were poorly developed, his mood issues, his anxiety issues, and then the subsequent paranoia were all things that I think were manifestations of things that had happened with him when he was younger, developing, lack of support, lack of treatment. I think they could have been addressed earlier, and I think there's still room. Was he 16 now? He's still an adolescent. His personality is still not done. His character is still not done. His brain is still developing. So there's, I think, room to intervene at this point to make some headway, to undo some of that stuff.
That's all I have, Judge. At this time, I'd like to move D1 into evidence, which I said would be entered on the seal.
Mr. Smith, any objection? It's the report. All right, it's admitted.
I think he asked for it to be under seal.
He did. Your position?
That's all I have. No, that's fine.
That's fine. I'll stay going.
All right, we'll file that under seal. Why don't we take a short restroom break before cross? All right, we'll be in recess for 10 minutes or so.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
before we get, this is, it's okay to do this without Mr. Gray, but can we have the computer on our side?
Yes, ma'am. All right, for the record, we're all present. Mr. Smith?
I'm Dr. Richards. I'm Brad Smith. I'm with the District Attorney's Office.
Good morning.
Ask a few things here. So the resources you relied on were Colt's medical records, law enforcement files, video footage of the shooting, and then various interviews with Colt, Colin, Marcy, and other people. Is that correct?
That was the bulk of it. I mean, I had like I said, I had a hard drive with a lot of stuff on it, but I think those were the highlights. Yeah.
How much time and energy did you put into each of those things?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't break it down that way,
Okay.
to be honest with you.
But would it be safe to say that most of the information you had came from either Colt or Marcy?
In terms of information I gathered myself, yes. You know, it was from him and his mom as a collateral.
And even like a lot of the secondary sources with interviews and stuff from law enforcement, it's what they are telling law enforcement.
Of course.
And like even the Discord records is Colt saying stuff on Discord.
That's correct.
Now, Marcy, Colt's mother, you would consider her an unreliable source?
I would say she is reliable to an extent.
Okay.
She certainly has an angle.
Yeah. And you were aware that she had, in the few years leading up to this incident, she had limited contact with Colt.
Yes, I was aware of that.
Okay. In fact, in November 2nd of 2022, Marcy leaves the house that Colt lives in and goes down to Fitzgerald.
Right.
Okay. And it wasn't until August 11th, 2023, almost a year later, that Colt goes down to stay with her from August 11th of 23 to October 4th of 23.
That sounds about right.
So about 2 months that they lived together.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of contact.
And then he leaves in October because Marcy tests positive for drugs. And she comes up to stay with him the next year, July 6, 2024 to August 16th of 2024.
That sounds about right.
It's about 1 month.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think she said it was about 5 weeks.
So in the 2 years leading up to the shooting, she was with him about 3 months.
Yeah, not very much time.
Okay. And during that time, she had serious intoxication issues.
She did.
Tested positive for drugs.
She did.
And that was a lot of the reason that he was removed from her and she left.
Yes.
Sort of things. In fact, she was in rehab for about 6 months with no contact, wasn't she?
I believe you're right.
Okay. And she had her own criminal justice issues.
She did.
Okay. And she had psychiatric issues on top of the intoxication.
Yes.
Okay. Were you also aware that Colt and her, even when they were separate, did not speak to each other very much?
It didn't seem like he had a lot of contact with her. There was a brief period of time not long before the shooting when she was living up there in Winder. But for a lot of the time before that, especially when her issues with the drugs and so forth happened, the contact was really limited.
Okay. In fact, they mostly just texted with each other.
I think that's a fair characterization.
Okay. Now, your first interview with Colt was May 16th of 2025.
That sounds right.
Okay, and that was 8 months after the shooting.
Right.
Okay. I want to go into Colt a little bit. Were you noticing that Colt likes to mimic other people, and especially like the other shooters, and things of that, like that.
There was some stuff, like some photographs that he took of himself, and I think the dyeing his hair orange was a manifestation of that. There were some things that I had in the records where it would be, I think one of them was James Holmes. There was another one I think was Christian Bale from a movie where he was making a particular face, and he would mimic those things, and I guess post them. They were in the materials that I got.
And when you were reviewing his Discord, that's when he's talking to members of this TCC community.
Correct.
Okay. Did you notice in his interactions with these people that he was very quick to, yeah, me too? They would say, I do this, or I experienced this, and he'd be like, yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think so. There was an element of that, certainly.
Did you notice where he would, even within the conversation, say one thing and then change it to accommodate and be more like the person he was talking to?
I can remember times when that happened, sure.
Well, I want to show you a couple of them to go through this phenomenon. First one's on Discord.
You
Okay.
on TV Live?
Is it going to pop up here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, it should.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. So this is him talking to the Mandy.
Right.
And Mandy's in the light green. Can you tell color difference on your monitor?
I can tell who's who. It also has their names.
And Colt is occasional burner.
Right.
And he is in the blue. And this is August 29th of 2024, so a few days before the shooting. And they're talking about Nicholas Cruz and
Right.
their obsession with Nicholas Cruz, correct?
That was what they talked mostly about.
Okay. And Mandy asked him, have you put a cookie in your sub yet? And he writes back, cookie in my sub, question mark.
Okay.
Okay, so this isn't them talking, this is them writing and reading each other's writing, correct?
Yeah, I think that's what it mostly, I don't know if they ever actually talked. I think it was all these text messages on Discord.
So when he types in cookie in my sub, question mark, he doesn't know what she's talking about, does he?
And either he doesn't know or didn't remember. I mean, clearly he asked her for clarification.
Okay. And then she says he would put a chocolate chip cookie in his sub sandwiches, referring to Nicholas Cruz.
Right.
And then Colt immediately says, oh yeah, multiple times.
I see that.
And that him kind of like, he doesn't even know what she's talking about, but then, oh yeah, I do that all the time.
Yeah, I think there were probably times that he did that. And I mean, again, I reviewed between Caitlin and Mandy like 50,000 messages. So, I mean, there were times when he did
But
this.
that's an example of Colt changing his answers about things to fit in with these people.
I think that's not an unfair characterization. I think he was very invested in trying to fit in with this unusual community. So, I mean, it seemed like he had plenty of his own independent information, but certainly this is an example of a time where he accommodated based on what somebody else said.
And if, let's say, for example, putting cookies on your sub sandwich was a sign of psychosis, this would be him kind of malingering, exaggerating that symptom.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it is, but
Right.
yeah, I mean, but yeah, I mean, it could be that. It's hard to know because we're looking again at a small sample. But certainly, I would agree with you that he was interested in being perceived as somebody that did this same thing that Nicholas Cruz did.
Yeah.
If he actually puts cookies in his subs.
Well, let's put another example that's a little more pertinent.
Sure.
This is also in the Discord with Mandy, and again.
Okay.
So, sorry, this is another person. This is not me. So,
Can I ask, are these, is there an exhibit number?
Your Honor, I'm going to need a little indulgence. Our next witness is going to put all of these in. I believe the Discord is in.
It's in the Foreign Business Record.
It was entered earlier. I would say the one I showed earlier was page 13
Okay.
of the occasional burner account. There's an occasional burner account and there's an F-bomb account. This is page 59 of the occasional burner account.
And the exhibit number? I'm sorry, I missed
I
that.
have the number after shortly.
Okay.
So, get this right quick. In this one, genderless black hole at the very top there says, I'm on 6 different meds, and they really don't do anything but make me stoned ASF. I took Zoloft before. I hope it actually works for you. And then he says, they did the same for me, like it made the room spin. Now, she's talking about 6 different meds, and he says they did the same for me. But he was never on 6 different meds or multiple meds. He was only on Zoloft.
That's the only one I'm aware of. Yeah, it was just the Zoloft his mom was giving him.
So the they, to try and make it sound like more, he's trying to, again, fit in with this genderless black hole, and he's changing the amount or types of medicine he's taking. Correct?
Yeah, you could read it that way. I mean, he could be referring to meds as they, but the only one he was on is Zoloft. That's true.
Okay.
He wasn't on 6 different meds.
He skipped down a little bit into the middle of the green there.
Okay.
Genderless black hole says, the worst side effects I've had were with hallucinations, but that wasn't on Zoloft, thankfully. And then she says, still get you hallucinations somewhat, though. And then he says, mine are auditory, correct?
Yes.
And that means he hears voices.
Right. That would be hearing things that aren't really there.
And then he says, although it may be schizophrenia, who knows?
Right.
And then she says, oh my God, same twinsies. I have visible ones too. And he says, same.
Right.
So when they talk about hallucinations, he first says, I have auditory hallucinations. Full stop.
Right.
And it's not until she says, well, I have visible ones. And then he changes it and says same.
Yeah, I agree. That's what he
Again, him
did.
changing, talking about his mental state, what he says his mental state is, he changes it to fit in with this group.
Right. He adds onto it.
Okay. And then let's go to page 61. In this case, you have them talking about drinking a lot. This is another person he's talking to. I do not know the gender of this person. But they're talking about getting blackout drunk.
Right.
And Colt is talking about how often he gets blackout drunk. Is that correct?
It looks like it.
Okay. And then at the very bottom, the next to last one, Colt says, I literally just steal it from my dad.
I see that.
Okay. Did you listen to Colin's interview about his home life?
A long time ago.
Do you remember him saying that he didn't drink and he didn't allow alcohol in the house at all?
That rings a bell. Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember Marcy's interview where she says the same thing?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So what
He
is
says, literally, I steal it from my dad. That's not true.
No, it's not what he told me either.
Okay.
So.
And then he says, sometimes I'll ask some random dude to walk in and get me some. Again, I never followed Colt around. I'm sure you did. But based on your understanding of how often he actually got outside his house, does that sound like something he would do?
Seems unlikely.
That's what I was thinking. Okay. And then we move to page 62. And same person that he's talking to, now they're moved on. Man, just do some DXM, bruh. Colt says real. And I'll ask you to drop the method whenever I'm up to it. He says, do you even know what that is? And he says, yeah, it's over-the-counter stuff. They're talking about Benadryl.
Right.
I think that's on the next call out. Yeah, so then he says Benadryl. Colt does.
Right.
And then he comes down a little bit and says, you just got to pull through the tiredness. After that, it's pretty much schizophrenia simulator.
I see that.
So Colt's saying that when he takes Benadryl to excess, he'll get schizophrenia simulator. Colt talks a lot about schizophrenia, doesn't he?
He does.
Okay. And then PK Waffle Fest says, that's not the worst part. It's the anxiety and the dread and seeing spiders. I'm terrified of bugs. So he's the one that first talks about hallucinations when he's on this and refers to bugs.
Right.
And then he says in the next one, the highest, go back up to the first one, sorry. So then PK Waffle Fest says, the highest I've ever gone is 450 milligrams. And Colt says, 725 here. It appears he's trying to one-up PK Waffle Fest.
Looks like it.
Again, exaggerating
Yeah.
for attention.
To fit in, yeah.
To fit in.
No, I agree.
Okay. And then the last one, PK Waffle Fest asks him, what kind of hallucinations do you experience? Colt says, knocking, beating on walls, it's weird, and then bugs,
Right.
which is exactly the same hallucination that PK Waffle Fest had.
Right, he was just talking about spiders, so yeah, same thing.
So now Colt is changing his hallucinations to fit this other person's hallucinations.
Right.
Okay. Because Colt lies a lot to get attention on Discord, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He created an entire other personas, lied about his age, name, location, so.
And Colt studies and emulates prior mass shooters. I think we talked about it earlier.
Yeah, he was kind of obsessed with that group of folks.
I think the main one timeline-wise was Adam Lanza, and that was the Sandy Hook Elementary shooter.
That was the first one that he identified becoming obsessed, quote unquote, but then said that he wasn't so interested because there wasn't that much information to find about him. In my perception was that Nicholas Cruz was the one he got most focused on, and then also I think it's James Holmes, the Aurora, Colorado. Those were the two that he was most focused on, although there had been a period of time. And the young woman, Caitlin, he was speaking with, she was an Adam Lanza person. That was her obsession. So they talked about that when he was talking to her.
Well, I want to pull up the other Discord. This would have been the F-bomb 703 one, Your Honor. And this is going to be page 9 of that exhibit that Ms. Danny will get you the number for.
It's 266.
266, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And then this one, the F-bomb is now Colt. This was back in 2023,
Okay.
2 years before the shooting. Are you familiar with the date of May 18th and the significance of that date? Not the specific date, but that time frame, middle of May.
I mean, my guess is that this was the other threat that he made.
Right.
Yeah, the
So
one
this-
from 2023.
So you may not remember, but you did look at the things. When they came out, that would have been May 21st.
That sounds about right.
So this is right before they came out to.
Right, I think Discord flagged this, and then they figured out who it was, and then they went and talked to Colt.
Right. And then he says, God, I've spent hours researching Adam. That's the third line down.
Right.
Okay.
And that would track. I think it was around 22, 23 when he got, and then he said Adam Lanza was the first one, so I would guess about that time he was focused more on him.
And then at the bottom, he's asking what the other person's target would be to commit a mass shooting. He says, I'll probably kill my dad, then go to my local elementary school. He says, but I might move to Connecticut and shoot up the new one for laughs.
Right.
And then on page 12, he says, I already have an outfit for if I commit a mass shooting. He got Adam's exact outfit, same shoes, same hat, even has a vest.
I see that.
And in the very bottom, he says, apparently Adam even wore sunglasses during the shooting.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, that's the kind of micro detail that these folks were interested in.
Yeah, they get down into every little thing about that shooter, how they dressed, what they said, what they did, everything.
Yeah, it seemed like it was so deep. It was like any piece of information they could find and put out there was kind of what they were after. And even like I said, Colt said his frustration about Adam Lanza is there wasn't enough information. There wasn't enough to find out about him, but clearly there was, some things. So.
Now, Colt destroyed the hard drive of his computer the morning of the shooting before he left school.
Yeah, he said The way he described it to me is they were more like SD card storage units. It wasn't like a physical hard drive or a solid state drive. They were little SD cards.
So he didn't tell you that he destroyed the actual hard drive the morning of?
He did say that he destroyed a hard drive, and then I asked him, and he talked about the SD drives, and it sounded, well, I think when he talked to Investigator Smith, that's what he said. But there's also photographs of him disassembling his computer. It's like in pieces in the house. And it appeared, I'm not a computer expert, but it appeared as though, it could have been that he removed a drive. And he certainly did refer to it as that in the messages.
And Colt told you that he did this because he was being surveilled by a government agency.
By somebody. He said it might be the government, but he thought he was infiltrated. And then he got this idea that there were government agents driving by the house, and is what he told me.
Yeah, I think Colt reported he believed he was being watched or followed both in person and online. He said he believed he had seen large black vehicles passing by his residence that he believed were from a government agency.
Right.
He stated he was unsure of why this type of surveillance would have been happening, but took actions to protect himself, including destroying data storage items from his computer and changing usernames frequently to avoid being tracked or followed.
Right.
Okay. And you thought that was significant for Colt.
I thought the idea that he was paranoid and felt like somebody was paying attention to him was significant, and I thought the fact that he followed through and did something in response to that belief. I think some of the story about government agents and SUVs, I don't know about that. I mean, I think he was paranoid. I think he felt somebody was watching him. I think some of the other stuff was embellished a bit.
So you believed it was signs of like delusional thinking?
I think it was signs of paranoia. Again, it's when you're trying to decide whether something is delusional, one of the things you can think about is whether somebody will change their behavior in response to it. So if you're paranoid and you think somebody is looking at you online and then you destroy media storage, that's doing a behavior in response to kind of a paranoid idea. Again, the elaboration with the SUVs and the guys with sunglasses and stuff, I don't know about all that, but I think there was some level of paranoia. I think some of the specific stuff was probably embellished a bit.
Okay. And that was based on destroying the SD drive?
Again, it was the idea that he was paranoid. I don't think he has a schizophrenia spectrum disorder. I don't think he's, but I do think he had paranoia that was part of his mood disorder that was impacting his thinking.
But didn't in May of 2023, didn't he do something on his computer that caused the FBI to call the sheriff's office to come to his house?
Yes, they did.
And that would be a logical reason, if you're going to continue doing those things on your computer, to destroy your SD cards.
Sure, that would be another way to explain it.
And that wouldn't be delusional or paranoia, would it?
No, that would be reality-based.
Did you do any research yourself on any of these other school shooters that Colt had?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I maybe looked at Wikipedia just to orient myself,
Okay.
But I didn't go down the rabbit hole or anything. I was just kind of making sure I understood who we were talking about.
I kept waiting for the FBI to show up at my door with all of my searches.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Did you know that Adam Lanza destroyed the hard drive of his computer?
I didn't know that.
Okay. Did you know he also did it on the morning before he went and did the shooting?
No, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't.
Did you know that he left it in the middle of his bedroom floor exactly like Colt did?
No, like I said, I don't know, but I did see the photo that Colt did that.
Would it surprise you to know that Colt did know that?
No, not at all.
Okay. Were you given his phone calls that he made after he was arrested from the RYDC?
I did receive some. I did not listen to all of them.
Okay.
But I listened to a couple.
I'm going to bring your attention to a phone call made on October 12th, 2024.
Okay.
At 11:38 a.m. in the morning. I guess that's what a.m. means. And Your Honor, this is not in evidence yet. I asked for some indulgence. That was our next witness who's going to be introducing these into evidence. and we had to take this doctor out of order.
I understand. What exhibit number will it be?
That's a good question.
So the jail calls are being introduced as exhibits 267 through 335, and they are labeled by date. So on the thumb drive that we'll give you, it'll be within that range, and it'll have the date of October 12th on there at 11:38.
All right, thank you.
So this is going to be October 12th, 11:38 in the morning. It's a phone call between Colt and his mother, Marcy Gray. And we're going to play the clip part from 8 minutes, 34 seconds to 8 minutes and 53 seconds.
Okay.
Next comment, how could anyone look at this kid twice and think that he was just like Lanza, in quotes? I guess.
So what they're doing is they're looking through posts on the internet, and people on the internet are comparing Colt to Adam Lanza.
I got you.
That's what they're talking about.
Okay, thanks.
If people have been saying that.
What's wrong with my roommate just get really connected to the computer on the floor?
So she says that people on the internet, and this is just a month after the shooting,
Right.
people on the internet are comparing him to Adam Lanza. And he says, wait till my room pictures get released and they see the computer on the floor.
Right.
That's a lot of forethought on his part.
Oh, yeah, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, again, there was a lot of forethought.
So before the shooting, he's anticipating the crime scene photos being released onto the internet.
That's what it sounds like.
Okay. Did you know that Colt didn't just destroy his computer like Adam Lanza did, that he staged it to look exactly like Adam Lanza's looked?
I was not aware of that. I don't find it surprising.
But you had interpreted it as paranoid delusions.
Again, I think it's important to note that I believed he was paranoid and anxious at the time, but I didn't believe that and I believe he thought that there was some people talking about him. But at the end of the day, I don't believe that's why he did what he did.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that those things were coexisting and impacting his insight and his judgment. But I don't think he was driven by hallucinations or delusions to do what he did. I think he planned it out, and the kind of stuff that you're telling me, I don't find it surprising at all.
Yeah, so this is more him destroying his computer is not so much a sign of delusions or paranoia. It's actually like an Easter egg for other Adam Lanza fans to discover.
I think it could be both, but I can see where it would, I mean, particularly like staging the computer like that certainly would be an example of that.
Okay. Let's go to Nicholas Cruz. Now we've moved on to the summer of 2024. He's moved on from Adam Lanza. Now he's fixating on Nicholas Cruz.
Right.
I want to show, this is Discord, Your Honor, this is back to the occasional burner. It's going to be on page 18. And he says there, Nick's bad, by the way. The image there, if you click on it, is just an image of Nicholas Cruz. And then Colt posts the image of Nicholas Cruz and then says, Nick's bad, by the way. The way he says, holy shit, while being arrested, it's so funny. Okay. So he has watched Nicholas Cruz's arrest based on this, correct?
I'm sure he has.
Okay. And he thinks it's funny that Nick Cruz said, holy shit, when he was arrested.
Right, that's what he says here.
Okay.
He and Mandy were both pretty obsessed with Nicholas Cruz.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Mandy brings up that Nicholas Cruz mentioned voices.
Right.
And then Colt says, and he mentioned demons. Demons, man. See that?
Yeah, I'm tracking, I'm following you.
And then voices, words of noises. And then WTF,
Right.
what the fuck? And then where TH am I? Holy shit, what happened?
Right.
Okay. So he's making fun of Nick's arrest, thinks it's funny. And he knows that when Nick was arrested, he heard voices,
Right.
or he said he heard voices.
Right.
He knows that when Nick was arrested, he said he saw hallucinations, these demons.
Yep.
And he knows that Nick claimed that he had blacked out during, like, holy shit, where am I? What happened?
Right.
Okay. Now, you listened to Colt's interview, right?
Correct.
Okay. And he said basically the same things.
That he didn't
When he
remember.
was arrested.
Yeah, that he didn't really remember.
That he heard voices,
Yep.
hallucinations, and he didn't remember.
Right.
So basically exactly what Nick Cruz said when he was arrested that Colt knows about, Colt said the same thing when he was arrested.
Right.
Okay. Now, did you watch the Nicholas Cruz trial, or did you look into that at all?
No.
Okay. And did you know that there was a doctor that looked at Cruz similar to what you did with Colt?
I mean, I'm sure there was, but I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole.
And it was Dr. Charles Scott. You ever heard of him or know him?
I don't think I know him.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you do know he testified in that trial.
Pardon me?
He testified in that trial.
Okay. Yeah, I'm following.
And Colt has seen all of that trial, hasn't he?
Yeah, he said he used to fall asleep watching it. He's watched it numerous times.
I think he told you he watched it 3 times.
At least 3, yeah. I mean, he did. He said he used, like he said, he used to fall asleep watching it.
And during Colt's interview with law enforcement the day of the shooting, he told them that Nick was notorious for faking his schizophrenia in his interrogation.
Yes, he did.
So he's watched that and he knows that.
He does.
Okay. Now, when Colt's talking to you at y'all's interview in May of next year, he tells you that the reason he watched the Nick Cruz trial was because he felt terrible for the victims and he wanted to know their stories.
Yeah, he did say that.
Okay. He said a lot of his looking up stuff with Nick told you was because he wanted to know more about the victims because he felt bad for them.
He did say that. I mean, clearly there's way more to it, but he did say that.
And he told investigators the same thing that day.
Right.
Now, did you corroborate that statement with Colt's Discord at the time?
The statement about...
About that he was looking into Nick and watched the trial of Nick because he was feeling bad for the victims and wanted to know more about the victims, Nick's victims.
No, but I mean, I didn't think that was the only reason he watched it.
Okay.
So.
Well, let's go to the occasional burner Discord account. This is on page 9.
Okay.
And this is Mandy. She's talking about when I watched the impact statements, I had so many panic attacks because, like, why do they feel the need to be so hateful? So these are the victims at Nick Cruz's sentencing giving their victim impact statements.
Right.
Sort of like our victims did in this case. I don't think you were in your phone.
No, I wasn't here for that, but I mean, I'm sure that happened.
And then Colt says, if it wasn't for Nick, I would have blown my brains out months ago. And then he responds to her, I know, right? So inhumane. Talking about the victims, talking mean to Nick.
That sentencing, yeah.
And then she says, like, begging for him to get raped and killed. And he says, and people say Nick's the monster.
Right.
So that doesn't sound like he's identifying with the victims. It sounds like he's identifying to Nick, and he's mad at the victims for being mean to Nick.
Yeah, like I said, you know, I was reporting what he told me. It was clear, if you read the messages with Mandy, there was way more to it. I mean, it was a whole deep, intense, obsessed, even sexual thing. And the idea that he may have looked at researched the victims was always part of the kind of the GCC thing. I don't want to give the impression that I think that's all he was doing.
No, I'm just saying this is what I'm showing you is complete opposite of what he told you.
Right, but not surprising based on his obsession.
In fact, continuing on with the same conversation, this is just the next thing down.
Okay.
She says, some made me sad. To be honest, I had, like Nick, so I just had a hard time with empathy. I only feel real empathy towards Nick. And then he says, God, I hated the black-haired bitch. Sam, I think. Did you know he's referring to Samantha Fuentes, one of the victims that survived the shooting apartment?
No, but that sounds right.
She testified that she had still had the shrapnel in her eye.
Right, okay.
And then he goes on to say, Nick should have blown your fucking brains out, Sam. It's okay though. 4chan leaked her shit. This is the exact opposite. He's telling you he's remorseful. He's telling you that I was just looking at this stuff because the victims, I cared about the victim. And then but he's actually saying this stuff.
Right, well, I read these messages as well. And again, I don't want to give the impression that I thought that's all he was doing. The obsession was clearly way beyond that. But in this TCC, kind of researching the shooter and researching the victims is part of the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is all pretty hateful.
Okay. And then the next page, the next line on page 10, let's jump her. Again. Now I want to go to page 16. That was just one of the victims.
Okay.
At the very bottom. He says, one of the teachers across from Scott mentioned she locked eyes with Nick before he shot Scott and injured her. Now he's referring to Stacy Lipple. She was one of the teachers that was standing outside with Scott Beagle. They were both teachers. Scott Beagle was shot by Nicholas Cruz while he was standing next to Stacy Lipple.
Okay.
She testified to this. And he says, LMAO, which you understand means laughing my ass off.
That's my understanding as well.
So not sympathy there.
No, I mean, again, I'm agreeing with you. This is, in addition, there was a lot of really bizarre, distressing stuff that was going on in this TCC in all of those messages that I read.
Yeah, let's go to page 31. Now, you click on the first image, an obituary will come up.
Okay.
Let's get down to the obituary. And that is Michael Schoolman. It was his obituary that Colt has found on the internet.
Right, I remember seeing that.
Okay. So Colt went looking for this, found this man's obituary, and he is the adoptive father of Parkland victim Scott Beagle. Scott Beagle is the teacher we just talked about.
You were just talking about.
He was, yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, he's passed away. So
Right.
he puts that image into the Discord. And Mandy says, is that him? And clicks a video, or attaches a video. Now that video is of Michael Schumann testifying at Nick Cruz's sentencing.
Right.
Okay. And Colt says, yep. And then she says, I hate that guy, and Colt posts a video. Did you click on that to see what that video was?
I don't know, because what is it?
That is the school surveillance video of Colt shooting that man's son.
Of Cruz?
Of Cruz, I'm sorry, yes, Cruz shooting that man's son.
There was a...
Colt puts the obituary of Mr. Michael Schoolman,
Right.
who's the father of Scott Beagle,
Right.
and then posts the video of Nicholas Cruz shooting his son, Scott Beagle.
I saw several videos that appeared to be of Nick Cruz in the school and shooting, but I couldn't tell who he was shooting at. But there certainly were. If that's what it was, then I'm sure I saw it, because there were a number of videos of him in the school with the weapon, and in some of them he was firing the weapon, but I couldn't tell who he was shooting at.
So he has no sympathy for Scott Beagle or his father, Michael Schoolman.
No, again, no, clearly not here. No,
Okay.
no.
And then he goes on down. Every time I watch this, the way I want to pin him down and stick a blade in his chest multiple times.
Right.
And then he says, same for that fucking Borges guy.
Right.
Do you know who he's referring to there?
No.
That was Anthony Borges. He was also a victim who survived.
Okay.
Fucking Nick should have come back around to double tap him. Now, Mandy, actually, according to Mandy, I don't know if she's telling the truth, but Mandy says she lives in that area of Parkland.
I think, yeah.
And knows Borges.
Okay.
Okay. And she's like, I can't believe I was friends with him. I swear he had a crush on me when I was 13. And Colt says, dox him. And the Biden says, I'll kill him for you.
Right.
So when Colt tells you this, that he has sympathy, the reason he was looking for this because he has sympathy for the victims, he is lying to you.
If I believe that was the only reason, yeah, but no, that's clearly not
I'm not
sympathetic.
asking what you
I'm not.
believed.
Yeah,
I'm asking what he said,
that is what he said. Yeah,
and that is him lying to you.
it would appear so.
Okay. Now let's move on to James Holmes. That's the Aurora theater shooter, the Batman movie.
Yeah.
He went to the Batman screen. Colt researched him and started idolizing. Well, he researched him for a long time, but he started idolizing him almost right up to the shooting, and then even after the shooting.
That sounds right.
Colt's shooting.
No, I knew what you meant. Yeah.
Now, for James Holmes, he was, the people in your position for him were Dr. Jeffrey Metzner and Dr. William Reed. Do you know either of them?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
But they were the ones that evaluated James Holmes and testified at the trial.
Right.
And did you know that with the Dr. William Reed, they actually tendered video of Holmes's psychiatric evaluation into evidence?
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So where like when you met with Colt and did all your stuff with Colt,
Right.
they actually videotaped it.
Okay.
When Dr. Reed did it, and that tape was put in the trial.
Okay.
Okay.
Tracking.
Did you know that Colt watched all of it?
Not surprised.
Okay. Did you know it was 15 episodes long, 8 hours each, according to him?
Yeah, and again, it's consistent with this obsessive fixation. So yeah, I'm not surprised that he would have done that.
Okay. In fact, he talked about that with his mom on the jail calls. Your Honor, this is on November 16th, 2024 at 11:23 a.m. This is from the 10:05 minute mark to the 11:18 minute. Thank you.
So it's okay when, you know, that obviously the usual email reviews and stuff like that. And I'm excited about him on the teacher responses and compare to that.
Okay.
And that I've really been fixating on James Holmes, and I think that looking to him that he would find a lot that is correlated to me. Amen.
Okay. I don't know anything really about him.
Oh yeah, that's what every mental health person I've met with is like study James Holmes because he really images me into the real life. It's so effective in general mental things that.
Okay, I'll read up on him. I wonder if there's a documentary on him.
There's some, but a really good watch is his 15 episode long, and they're like 8 hours each of recording of him and the psychiatrist. They pretty much going over questions.
Okay. So I can probably find some stuff on YouTube or something.
So remember, please how to get a book about him on Amazon?
Yes, I will. I think that written down.
So this is Colt talking with his mother, Marcy. And these are the two people you interviewed. These are your two sources.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're talking about this, and this is, well, months before they met with you. So this is October. This is November of 2024.
Yes, so it would have been months before, correct?
Okay. And he is actually watching and asked his mother to watch. A psychiatrist asked James Holmes questions, and James Holmes' response to that psychiatrist.
Right.
Wouldn't that kind of taint what you're going to do later on?
It could, potentially.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now, Holmes was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. Did you know that?
Yeah, I was aware that he had schizophrenia spectrum disorder.
And Colt told you that's what he had.
He said that's what they had diagnosed him with, but I didn't find that in the records, actually.
You didn't find that anywhere in the records?
No, they diagnosed him with psychotic symptoms, but as part of a mood disorder, not schizoaffective disorder.
And Colt said that Dr. Singleton was who diagnosed him with schizoaffective disorder.
Right, he said that, but that clearly wasn't true.
And did you see any mention of a Dr. Singleton in his reports?
I didn't go through all of them, but so I don't know if there was a Dr. Singleton in there or not.
So Colt is telling you that he was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder.
Right.
The same one James Holmes had.
Yeah.
But according to his medical records, that's not true.
No, and I don't think he said, I don't think he has schizoaffective disorder either. So.
Did Colt tell you that he researched the evaluations and diagnoses of Cruz and Holmes?
I don't remember talking to him about that.
Okay, so he never volunteered to you that he had looked at their diagnoses and evaluations and that sort of stuff?
No, but again, knowing what I know about the level of obsession, it wouldn't have surprised me to find that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he tell you he also coordinated those things with Marcy?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm going to play you 4 more calls. The first one's going to be on 10/25, October 25th. So this is just about a month and a half after the shooting.
Okay.
Not guilty is a definitely a good stance, but I would at least like to know.
Well,
So what's going on here is they just found in the news that Colt's original attorney had sent in a waiver of arraignment and a not guilty thing. So it happened outside of court. Colt wasn't there, didn't know this had happened. So he's finding out from his mother that his attorney had entered a not guilty plea on his behalf.
Got it.
That's what they're talking about.
Okay.
calling, because that's something, I mean, you need to keep me updated on that kind of shit. I mean, I'm supportive of it, but I just need to know what his intentions are. I mean, is he going to claim insanity, temporary insanity? Because that's really the only way, that's the only way that should be getting not guilty,
Sure. But kind of what we hope now, thinking about it.
Yeah, after all that was, hell yeah. I mean, that was my first thought anyway.
Because if they're pushing for not guilty, then that means they're going full on with the insanity, which I can definitely stand up for.
Yep, and, when you see Miss Dodger and her wanting to try, some medicine for schizophrenia, that's just even more backed up.
I've been getting medicine for when it's possible, it's there.
Do what?
I've been getting medicine when you possibly have to.
That's not what I was saying.
So that's them talking about using mental illness as a chance to get a not guilty.
Right.
Okay. And that a doctor would really help that.
Right.
Okay. And that's on October 25th. Go to the next day, October 26th.
Because we've already got not guilty, which is actually like people have told me that's like usually when they're going for something along the lines of like insanity and stuff. And temporary insanity is also a thing that actually exists in law. And that, along with them saying like putting everything on dad, like the deterioration and stuff, and getting second-degree murder and stuff, like what my things will be. Like I genuinely wonder if they'll like truly see, like I'll be medicated soon and like I'll be completely changed and out of that call.
That's exactly what I told Mary. And what I told her is that, like a temporary insanity could back in the midst of like a psychotic manic state, which is, it's the classic description of temporary insanity, when you're under the influence of some type of extreme mental distress.
It's literally the definition of mania. Mania is the manic state going forward.
Exactly.
That's where you have these bursts of manic, and for me, it switched from manic to feeling very happy and euphoric, like saying, just feeling like on top of the world.
Yes, that's exactly right. Almost like you're high on.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so, if that plea is accepted by a jury, which, it's likely that it would be, Of course, right. Oh, I'm going to cry regardless. I'll either cry from happiness or sadness, or the other.
So that's them talking about the possibility of not guilty by temporary insanity. Colt seems to know a lot about manic psychosis and psychotic and things of that nature.
Yeah, he even talked about that with Investigator Smith right after. He was using words like schizophrenia and
And he's
mania.
telling his mother the symptoms of that.
Right.
And this is the person you use to corroborate those symptoms.
That I used to corroborate some things. I never believed he was manic. I never believed he had schizophrenia. I never believed he was anywhere near the neighborhood for an insanity defense. It was never on the table.
But these people are talking about it.
Of course they are, and I talked about it with him too and told him that was not something that was feasible, and never, I think I even wrote in my report, they can talk about insanity all they want, but my evaluation of him didn't reveal any actual mania and didn't reveal a diagnosis of schizophrenia and didn't reveal sufficient symptoms to warrant an insanity, temporary or otherwise, finding. They're talking about it. They can talk about it until the cows come home, but there was no evidence for it.
And then on the next month, November 24th, they talk again.
Also thought of looking to James Holmes' case because I think you can find a lot of correlations. Can you look into his case? Oh yeah, I got some. I want to recommend to you.
Okay.
It's by a guy named Huncho. His channel is Huncho.
Can you spell it?
Huncho. Huncho. Huncho.
That's it.
Like a guy. Probably understand. No.
So was he a serial killer or what was he?
James Holmes, mass shooter, the Aurora Theater guy.
Hi. So this is it's Huncho.
The channel made it.
I was so funny. Hi, I didn't hear you say that. I've never heard of that channel. Hey, Huncho. Is it online? I thought you were saying it was like Netflix sort of thing. Okay. So that's a good James Holmes.
James Holmes, Egg Huncho.
Okay, got it.
Something about a fever in the title.
Yeah, okay.
Try anytime you come to like it, I think you can notice where it's being and kind of suffering from the same thing.
I always thought that was kind of very interesting story when that happened.
He really is a really smart guy, like going into college and stuff, and then when you have the shit caught up with him, dropped out and got up with either.
When it first happened, I read a bunch about it, but it's been a long time, I feel like, since I read anything about it.
Yeah, like I said earlier, he's like a stereotypical, schizophrenic man with a gun.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so here he's now telling his mom to watch videos of James Holmes, looking for the similarities between Colt's mental state and James Holmes.
That's what it appears.
Okay. And again, the next month, on December 5th.
All phone calls are subject to monitoring and recording. Bill has $47.14. Thank you for using Amcal. You have $47.14. Hey, yes you do. So we were watching it last night. I ended up falling asleep, but I'm going to finish the parts that I didn't see. No, we watched it with me yet.
It looks like Hunter, right? The British guy. The British guy, right? The narrator?
Yeah. So she watched that one, and then, like I said, I fell asleep, so I'm going to have to rewatch it. But then she stayed up till like 3 o'clock in the morning watching all these documentaries about shooters and stuff. She watched one on the Aurora shooter. She watched one on the Parkland, on the cruise. You're like binging until 3 o'clock in the morning. Well,
I think you should look into those guys. The James and Nick are the ones that I correlated most to myself.
well, I've read a ton about especially Nick, but I never see the documentary. And she watched one other one. I can't remember what the other one was. Yeah, she literally just got up. I mean, she still can't 11 o'clock today because she was up so late watching it.
Well, what did you think of James Holmes one?
Well, honestly, I didn't really watch enough. I don't feel like to get any additional knowledge other than what I already had. But, maybe. Mama.
Yeah, well, Paul's pretty good, sure, but it's annoying.
Well, we didn't put much into one, didn't we? Colt was there when she thought of the documentary. It was a good documentary, and it was very informative. I guess she some things into it.
What did she say?
She said that it was very informative. It sounded like she was giving a book report. It was very informative, and I saw a few things that were similar to Colt, but not a lot. No, that's my news.
Are you aware that Mamu is his grandmother, Deborah?
That's what I guessed.
Now, all of these calls were before any of them talked to you.
Right.
Okay. In fact, you talked to Colt on May 16th for the first time of 2025.
That's it, yeah.
So months after the shooting.
Right.
Okay. And he'd been in the RYDC the entire time.
Yes.
And was being treated by them.
Yes.
And Colt is telling you all these symptoms that he has.
Right.
Psychotic symptoms.
Right.
Okay. And you find out he hasn't told the people that are treating him these things.
That's what he told me, yeah.
Okay. Now, is that telling you one thing but not having told his treatment providers, is that a symptom of malingering?
That's symptom of malingering. No, because if you're hiding symptoms, that's different than malingering. But again...
Well, no, I'm saying malingering to you, not malingering to them. I'm not saying he's lying to them.
Let me make sure I understand your question.
What I'm saying is when he's telling you he's had psychotic symptoms,
Right.
but he hadn't told anybody treating him for months about it,
Right.
isn't that a symptom that he's malingering to you?
It's possible.
Now, malingering is generally to avoid punishment.
Right. Or
There can
to
be
get something.
There can be other secondary motivations.
Correct.
Okay. And hallucinations and delusions are the most common symptoms to be malingered.
Right. That's
There's
what,
no brain scans for that.
right. That's what usually people will try and do. They'll talk about seeing or hearing things or having delusions.
And were you weary of this possibility?
Was I wary of it? Oh, yeah. I mean, again, the way that he reported the hallucinations that he said he had was not really consistent with how hallucinations work.
Right.
And, the idea of schizophrenia or schizoaffective, you never really reported any symptoms consistent with those. And even though Mom used the word mania quite a bit, she never really described a manic episode. So, I mean, they're talking about these things, but this is the thing when people don't really have a particular diagnosis, but then they try and manufacture it as they don't really know how to do it right. And so, I didn't believe that it was hallucinations that caused him to do what he did. I believe that paranoia impacted his judgment and his thinking. But again, I didn't, never thought he was even close on insanity. Never thought he had schizophrenia. Never thought he had bipolar disorder. So if he was trying to convinced me he had them, he did a poor job because I didn't see any evidence for it.
Okay. If that would be the motivation.
If it would be the motivation. Yeah, well, I think, I mean, as I said, I think I said in the report that there can be symptoms and exaggeration at the same time, and I think that's what was going on. I think he does exaggerate his symptoms.
As similar to how he anticipated the crime scene photo of his room getting out, the one where he destroyed his computer like Atlanta.
Right.
He anticipated that getting out.
Yeah, that's not surprising. Like I said, I'm not saying I think.
And would it be possible, we talk about that probably being like an Easter egg for other Adam Lanza fans.
Sure.
Would it be possible that he also anticipated you or someone like you would be testifying at his trial or sentence?
Well, I'm sure he did.
And would it be possible that he would like to plant other Easter eggs for people watching on TV and other James Holmes fans to discover?
It's possible.
Okay. Now, you gave him the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory Adolescent Edition restructured form.
Correct.
And that has validity scales in it.
It does.
Okay. And the first test, the validity scales test for things like malingering.
Yeah, well, they call it underreporting or overreporting, but yeah, basically.
Okay. And the first test suggests a significant overreporting of symptoms.
Correct, to the point that it invalidated
To the
the
point
test.
it invalidated
Yeah,
it.
correct. You're right.
And that was on May 16th. You gave him another test 9 months later in February of 26.
Right.
And that one still said possible overreporting.
Yep.
Which is malingering.
Not necessarily. The way that we talk about malingering is a specific kind of overreporting. The test can only get to overreporting. The test doesn't know why you're doing it.
Okay. So you look at his psychological or his mental health records from RYDC.
Correct.
Okay. Now, he was seen by his first psychiatrist was Dr. Simone Dupree.
That name sounds familiar.
Dupree.
I don't know her, but
Okay. I was going to assume it was a woman also, so I'm glad you
yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have done
glad
that.
you did.
But
We'll go with that hypothesis.
sounds like a woman's name.
So she, or Dr. Dupree, interviewed or met with Colt on September 10th, 2024. This would have been 6 days after the shooting.
Right.
Okay. And she stated that Colt denied suicidal and homicidal ideations as well as psychotic symptoms.
Right.
And the psychotic symptoms would include hallucinations and delusions.
Right.
Okay. So on September 10th, he's denying that.
Right.
Okay. And she also puts in her report, patient did not display any remorse for his actions.
Okay.
And he's not put on any medications at that point.
Right.
Okay. Now, the next day, September 11th, 2024, he meets with a psychologist, which is Christopher Ackerman. Do you know Christopher Ackerman?
I don't know him, but that name is familiar.
Okay. And he says that Colt reports occasional auditory and visual hallucinations.
Okay.
The last time being 3 days ago. So 3 days prior to September 11th was when he was having auditory and visual hallucinations 3 days ago. But 1 day ago, he told Dr. Dupree he has none of those.
Right.
So that's inconsistent, right?
Yes, it is.
And then Christopher Ackerman actually puts in his notes that the youth endorses symptoms on malingering screening. And he says malingering of psychosis appears evident.
Okay.
Okay. Now then, on September 24th of 2024, Dr. Dupree sees him again. And she writes that he denied suicidal, homicidal ideations as well as psychotic symptoms. So now he's back to denying them again.
Right.
I don't see or hear things. And she writes, currently there are no symptoms for me to intervene pharmacologically. And gives him no medication.
Right.
Okay. The next month, he says, Dr. Dupree sees him again. This is October 22nd. Now he's saying, I hear voices telling me to see what you have done. It's all your fault. At times I see black shadows. And she notes that the patient's mother will be contacted regarding symptoms reported. No medication. So this is on October 22nd.
Right.
He tells the doctor that he hears voices. So it's the first time he's told this doctor that.
Sounds like, yeah.
And she says, I'm going to contact his mom and tell him about her about this. That's on October 22nd.
Okay.
Now the phone calls between Marcy and Colt were 3 days later, October 25th and October 26th, discussing not guilty by reason of insanity.
Right.
So the first time he tells his doctor, I'm hearing voices, I'm seeing things, 3 days later, he's on the phone with his mom talking about getting not guilty by reason of insanity.
Right.
On November 12th, so the next month, Dr. Dupree sees him again. He says, something happened yesterday. I felt that everything was muffled. I felt that I was like in a tunnel, heard whispers berating me. But he denied psychotic symptoms. And she writes, youth endorses symptoms on malingering screening.
What's that last word?
Malingering screening. Screening.
Oh, screening. I'm sorry.
Test.
Yeah, I don't hear well
They gave him a
sometimes.
test to
Got
test
it.
for malingering.
Yeah.
And he indicated they had symptoms of that.
Okay.
And still don't give him any medication.
Okay.
The next month is December 9th. Dr. Dupree meets with him again. And he tells her, I see frogs in my room, Tuesdays and Wednesdays mostly. I close my eyes and they disappear. They don't come on other days. And she writes, one does not hallucinate on specific days and be free from them on other days.
Right, that's a good
example.
Yeah, and that's a good example of someone that doesn't know how hallucinations work.
Right, so he's lying to Dr. Dupree about
Sounds like, yeah. Yeah, and again, I feel like I need to coming back. I was clear in my report. I think he makes things up.
Right.
I think there's some level of paranoia, but then some of the more outlandish stuff, I never really believed. So, the thing about some of the things that he said he was hallucinating and some of the magnitude of the psychotic symptoms, I didn't think were actually genuine, and I didn't think they were the reason that the way that he explained it to Investigator Smith, that, it was because of voices, and I never thought that was the reason.
Now, on January 6th, they meet, still no medication.
Right.
February 4th, they meet, still no medication, because he's not telling them things for them to medicate them, correct?
Right.
Okay. February 5th, of 2025, he's actually transferred back to Christopher Ackerman, the psychologist, because they're not using medication.
Okay.
Okay. They actually say transferred to him as patient because he's not prescribed meds. And youth is stable, doing well behaviorally and emotionally.
Right.
Then on April 11th, Colt claims to Dr. Ackerman that he claims to smell gunpowder and sees shadows in his peripheral vision occasionally. And Dr. Ackerman says that the youth endorsed a high number of malingering items on SIRS, S-I-R-S, a few months ago. And that's the structured interview of reported symptoms test.
Right.
Okay, and that's another test for malingering.
That's exactly what that test is for.
And he has no medications.
Right. Okay.
And that's on April 11th. You then meet with him on May 16th for
Right.
the first interview.
Yes.
Okay. 12 days later, on May 28th, that's when he goes to Christopher Ackerman and reports increased anxiety, would like to be considered for possible med referral. So after he's met with you, he then goes, like you told him to,
Right.
goes to Dr. Ackerman and says that he has increased anxiety.
Right. I think that's something he actually did have.
Right. But Christopher Ackerman, Dr. Ackerman says that his speech was normal tone rate, his thought process was clear and goal-directed.
Right.
He did not appear visibly distressed.
Okay.
Put that in his notes.
Okay.
No psychomotor agitation, effect was neutral, calm.
Right.
So he's saying, the child's telling me this anxiety stuff, but I'm not seeing any physical manifestations of it.
Okay.
And then he goes on to say, exacerbation of anxiety symptoms. He believes he needs medication to help cope with since he's overwhelmed.
Right.
But again, no medications. Then you meet with him again on June 19th for 2 hours?
Sounds right.
Okay. So a few weeks after that.
Right.
And then it's in July 16th to 25 is that when he meets with Dr. Ackerman again. And now he says, patient does not appear distressed, but complains of persisting anxiety and recent depression. So again, the doctor's pointing out in his notes that the kid is telling me one thing, but he's not showing manifestations of those things.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he was looking for. I mean, a lot of people that tell you they're depressed or anxious don't look acutely depressed or anxious when you're speaking with them. But, you know, that is what it is. I mean, the anxiety and depression are things that I think were there. He comes across as kind of, or did with me at least, as kind of flat most of the time anyway. But that's, you know, okay, if that's what, you know, I wasn't there.
Right.
So that's what he observed.
And then he says in there that the Colt endorses delusions but suspect malingering.
Right.
So again, they don't believe what Colt's telling them.
Right.
So now he goes to another psychiatrist. So he leaves Dr. Ackerman, the psychologist, and goes to Dr. James Freeman, who's a psychiatrist.
Right.
Do you know Dr. Freeman?
I don't know Dr. Freeman, but I recognize his name from...
Okay. And he says, youth notes mood swings, anger issues, some paranoia, but notes FB. I don't know what that means. FB/NM of incident. Flashbacks.
That sounds right.
Now notes flashbacks.
What's the other one? NM.
Anyway, of incidents that led to his being detained. So we're
Right.
now getting flashbacks of the shooting. Some paranoid ideation, possible, maybe anxiety rather than psychosis. And then he writes, there's a history of probable malingering.
Right.
Then in October of that year, October 1st, he meets with Dr. Freeman again. Patient now states he sees a figure. However, affect is euthymic. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, euthymic just means like normal mood.
Like calm.
Yeah, just stable, normal, like you and I right now talking to one another.
So he says, patient now states he hears and sees a figure. However, he's calm when claiming this.
Right.
Okay. Suspect some malingering.
Yeah, I think people can be calm and report hallucinations, but I think they were responding more to what the content he was claiming to see, because those don't sound like real hallucinations.
Yeah, and then 2 weeks later, they meet again on October 15th. He says some continued issues, a bit vague on symptoms. And being vague on symptoms is a sign of malingering also.
It can be, yeah, it can be. And again, you know, the mistake people make most of the time when they try and malinger is that they don't really know how the disorder they're trying to malinger works, so they don't do it right.
December 4th, 2025, Hughes states he hears and sees his father. Some other AV hallucinations as well, though less defined. And then he puts significant degree of embellishing symptoms likely.
Yep.
In fact, the doctor actually put embellishing symptoms in all caps.
Right. I saw that a few places in the records.
That'd be significant, wouldn't it, that they put it some words in all caps?
I suppose, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I think he was right. So.
Again, on December 29th, 2 weeks later, again, Dr. Freeman likely embellishing and or malingering of psychotic symptoms.
Right.
Keeps trucking on through the next year. We're now into 2026. Again, now this is March 14th, 2026 with Dr. Freeman. At this point, he says, when event briefly discussed, so I guess they're talking about the shooting.
That would be my guess.
When event briefly discussed, Youth did not express remorse or seem emotional. And then he wrote, if 18 would likely meet criteria for antisocial personality disorder.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, malingering doesn't make you antisocial, but
Well,
okay.
I don't think he's saying it's because he's malingering. He just says that 18 would likely meet criteria for
Yeah, I'm not sure where he's getting that, but okay.
And I think you testified earlier with personality disorders, they're too young at that age to actually diagnose with somebody.
Right, because the personality is not really finished. You know, it's not all the way done yet.
But apparently Dr. Freeman is seeing signs of that at this age, but can't diagnose him because he's not 18 yet.
That's what he's saying. Yeah. I mean, that's what I believe he's saying, is that I think he's saying if he was older, he would diagnose him with that.
And someone with antisocial personality disorder is also a higher risk for malingering, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, other signs of malingering. So now we have both of your scales say he's malingering, and all three of his treating physicians believed he was malingering.
Yeah.
Correct.
Great.
Other signs of malingering are inconsistencies and contradictions, correct?
Can be.
Okay. When you watched Colt's interviews from the day of the shooting, did you check them for signs of malingering?
Did I check them for signs of malingering? Yeah. A lot of the stuff, it didn't seem. Again, I keep coming back to the idea that, you know, I know that's what he said on the day of the shooting, but that didn't. The way he was talking about psychosis and schizophrenia is like not how they work.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so I've never thought he did the shooting because he was hallucinating things. And so if he was telling investigator Smith that, then I don't think that was true.
Okay. Now, one of the things he said, he tells the investigators that his dad had hid the gun from him.
Right.
Okay. Now, this is the interview he gave at the school.
Right.
And are you aware of the time frame of that interview to when the actual shooting happened?
I think the first one happened like in a classroom in the school, and then the next one was, I think it was later that day at CID.
Like, this is like 30 some odd minutes after the shooting.
The one where he was all hysterical, yeah, that was in a classroom, and my impression was that it actually started, the way it sounded is that it started in the hall and then moved into a classroom.
Right. But this is after he's been arrested, and he's giving that first interview.
Right, yeah, like right immediately after everything happened.
Play a clip from that.
Okay.
I heard yesterday, Your Honor, this is going to be the clip from the Apalachee at the school, and it's from 6:09 to 6:26.
Thank you.
I told him to hide his guns, and he did, but I don't know if I found them.
Your dad hid the guns?
Yes, he already ordered a gun safe. It's one of those situations where like Ethan was like oblivious.
Huh.
Now, this is 6 minutes into that interview.
Right.
And a lot of the interview is him reading his rights. So this is early on into what happened.
Right.
Okay. And Colt volunteers that I told my dad to hide the guns, and he did.
Yeah, that's what he said.
And that's without being questioned on it.
Right.
He volunteered that
Yeah, I think that was spontaneous. I don't think anybody
at
asked
the
him.
onset.
Right, sure.
In your review of the materials that you sent about the case, were you aware that that's not true?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, in the emotion, with him crying, right then and there, he has the ability to make up a complete lie to this officer.
About where the gun was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the father did not hide the guns.
No.
In fact, he testified at trial under oath that he did not hide the guns.
No, it was in Colt's room.
In fact, Colt goes into pretty elaborate steps to describe what he went through to get the guns. Let me play a couple more clips. Remember, the first one's at 1745 to 1854.
Okay. So you said you looked for a while for the gun today.
Yes, sir, because he hid it. That's what I'm trying to say. It wasn't his fault because
Where did he normally keep it?
In his room.
Do you know where in his room?
I think in his closet, but when I found it, I think it was in his toolbox. I can't remember. He definitely tried his hardest. I know he did.
Okay, but you told your dad. When did you tell your dad to move it? You said was it months ago? Or days ago?
It was like a month ago. I've definitely been fighting this off for so long. Oh my God, this is so traumatic. I know for all of you. I'm so sorry.
And you said you think it was in his toolbox?
I think it was, yes.
Okay.
It was somewhere really well hidden.
Okay, where is his toolbox?
In his truck. And you know, like trucks, they have.
Okay, so you found it in his truck?
It was either his truck, in his truck toolbox, or some kind of case that he had locked up.
In his truck?
Yes, sir.
When did you get the gun?
I got it like right before I left.
So he's saying that it was in his dad's truck, and he got it right before he left.
Right.
And this is immediately after, this is like his first interview.
Yeah, it seemed like he was trying to protect his dad.
Yeah. And then, but we know that's not true, right?
Right.
Because the dad actually left in the truck before Colt came out.
Right, so
That's physically impossible.
that wouldn't have worked.
That wouldn't have
No.
worked.
Well, I mean, it wasn't
And
true,
Colt
so.
realizes that by the time he gets to the second interview later that day.
Right,
Okay, and he gives a different version to them.
right.
And this is going to be the interview at the CID, Your Honor, and that's going to be from 3610 to 3753.
Cool. All right, so we're talking about grabbing some mags. The gun was in a box.
Yes, sir. Covered in clothes. He had some clothes over it, which I guess was another, last resort, to hide it.
All right, so that's my next question. To you, is that hidden, or is that somewhere where you know to go find it?
No, that's hidden. I looked for it for a good while. That was a really good, that's not him just half-assing, I'm going to hide this. He knew this, at this point, something was definitely very off, and he was going to give me the help that I needed.
Does he go to work before you go to school or something?
Yes, sir.
All right, so when you're going to school, you're alone.
Yes, sir.
What time did you get up this morning?
I didn't get up this morning. I've been awake for
So you just stayed long? Okay. So
it was just that was most of that just stemmed from the sheer fight of just trying to fight off this urge and this bad.
So once your dad left for work, is that when you started looking for the gun?
Yes, sir.
What other, preparations did you make?
That was pretty much about. I remember just grabbing whatever thing I saw that could somehow conceal it, which at that point was just horrible because somebody was thinking along those lines, which in this case I'm assuming was paper from what I can recall vividly. Paper poster maybe was wrapped around it.
Where'd you get the poster from?
I think it was just lying around.
It had pink stuff on it.
Yeah, it's just in my house. I just picked it up.
Is it something like your sister made?
I don't know. I didn't look at it. I just wrapped it around because the outside was white. And I didn't
use that.
So now he's changing it from, you realize now it's inside the house.
Right.
Found it hidden under clothes.
Right.
So the day of the shooting, immediately after, he's not being forthcoming about it. He's lying.
Right, like I said, I think he was trying to protect his dad, because he never represented anything to me other than that he was always in possession of it. It was a different story than what he told the investigator.
Now, Colt told you, we talked about this, about the computers, destroying his computer.
Right.
And he told you that government agencies were surveilling it.
Yeah, that's what he thought. Okay. He suspected.
Gloves in the hallway where he was laying down.
Sorry about that. But he told investigators that the teachers had somehow gotten into his computer.
Okay.
He made no mention of government agencies to the
No, he didn't. No.
Okay. Go ahead and play the clip at the bottom of the page. Your Honor, this is going to be the interview at the investigations, 432 to 547.
You in the 4 or 5 Discord accounts that you've had, do you have any other social media?
Not that I know of.
You don't have a Facebook account?
No, like as far as like chat, social media, no. I've never used those.
Okay, no Instagram, Snapchat.
Any account that I've had previously is probably wiped, deleted.
Okay.
But not recently, no.
Why did you wipe and delete your accounts?
I'm talking like months ago, like, and honestly, I don't know. I mean, that's just a habit. I mean, that's like, making new emails, like thinking.
How many different emails do you think you've had?
You can it's only limited for phone numbers, so like 6.
Okay. What's your current email address?
I have 3, I think.
Do you know of?
Yeah.
What are your 3 email addresses?
They're at Gmail, but I know 2 of them I can't remember, but I know the other one was more of like a burner. I think it was Declivity Decentralized, and I can't remember the set of numbers.
Okay. Declivity?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't know. It just shows like really unique words.
So you said that Colt told you that the reason he changed his passwords and usernames frequently was because of government surveillance.
Yeah, or somebody tracking him.
And you use that as another example of him having delusions.
Yeah, I
paranoia.
think he was paranoid. Yeah.
But that's not what he told them is why he did it. He told them it's just a habit he does, like changing his emails.
Okay.
In fact, all the time, all his delusions with the investigators was that it was students and teachers out to get him. He never mentions the government at all.
No, and the government, again, was to do with speculating, because they even asked him, like, why would the government want to track you? And he said he didn't know. And he talked about students and teachers as well, and that's what he talked to Mandy about, and I guess his mom, too. So.
But in over 3 hours of interviews with the investigators, he never mentions the government. He always mentions teachers and students.
Okay.
And it's not until he talks to you that the government comes in.
Okay.
Okay. And he told you the FBI was following him?
Yeah.
Did you know that James Holmes also said the FBI was following him?
Yeah, I didn't believe the FBI was following him, but it doesn't surprise me that James Holmes would say something like that.
Right. And it was in the video that Cole had watched.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, with you, the person he anticipates will probably testify.
Right.
He is saying something similar to what James Holmes said.
Right.
He's planning another Easter egg.
I suppose so.
Now, Colt told investigators he was wearing purple gloves.
Right.
Okay. Are you aware that that's not true?
I only saw a little.
You may not, because I don't know.
Yeah, I only saw a tiny clip, and it was when he was being arrested, so I didn't know whether that was true or not.
Okay. Well, let's play the clip.
I remember him saying it when he was talking to the investigator, but I didn't have any. I didn't know.
Right. Your Honor, this is from the one at the school, and it's 2447 to 2521.
That's when the bathroom. I guess I would assume I just got ready. I don't know.
Help me understand how you got ready.
I guess just putting gloves on.
Okay, so you put gloves on. What kind of gloves did you put on?
I think they're out there. I don't know. I think they're purple. I can't remember.
Like the little rubber ones? Like the little thin ones?
No, I don't. I think so. Maybe I think they were purplish. Like purplish. They were fully purplish. I know.
Okay.
I think.
So you put gloves on.
Okay. So Colt tells them 4 times he uses the word purple.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They were actually just the standard yellowish tan work gloves.
Okay.
Okay. Just your generic work gloves.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does purple sound distinctive to you?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the gloves that like EMTs use.
And he was insistent that it was purple.
Right.
Which was not true.
Not true.
Okay. Did you know that Kyle Rittenhouse wore purple gloves?
No.
You know who Kyle Rittenhouse is?
I do. That never came up in my conversations, and I didn't see it in any of the discords, but I'm aware of who that
You know
is.
that Colt also researched Kyle Rittenhouse.
I did not.
And then when he's telling these investigators something that's not true, it's another Easter egg for fans of Kyle Rittenhouse to see.
Potentially, yeah.
Did you talk to him about why September 4th?
No.
Did you hear on his interview why he told the investigators September 4th?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Okay. Do you remember him telling them it was because voices were telling him that the teachers were going to strike on that day or the next?
That sounds about right. He told me when he went to the school, he believed something was going to happen that day.
Okay.
But it wasn't. He didn't tell it to me the same way he told it to the investigators. He just said he had a feeling something was going to happen.
So he had to do it that day because he thought something was happening that day.
Yeah, I mean, when he talked to me, and then when I read the Discord messages, the way he represented it to me was that he believed something was going to happen at the school that day. I was not as clear at how focused he was on the 4th until I saw the messages with Mandy.
Right.
Yeah.
So his version, it almost sounded like a preemptive self-defense against these voices that were going to do something to him.
Potentially, although it was clear it was clear from the messages with Mandy that he was going to do something on September 4th, but he never said what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you look at his Discord to see what his actual motivations were for September 4th?
For that specific date? I didn't know that there was any specific significance to that date. I mean, I think, again, my formulation for how the whole thing happened was this obsession and getting lost in the true crime community and all of the things that get you cred and get you, noticed in that group, and, kind of just disappearing into that subculture where different things are valued. I mean, I never thought it was because of psychosis, but
okay.
So
let's go to the Discord. This is going to be the occasional burner Discord account. This is going to be page 32.
Okay.
In Colt's occasional burner, Mandy says, Colt says, also September 4th, can you be awake like at around 8:30ish, 9ish in the morning?
Right.
And this is August 31st.
Right. I mean, he clearly knows he's going to do something on the 4th. Yeah. I mean, in retrospect now, we can...
5 days.
Right. We know.
5 days before.
Sure.
And she says, what's happening on the 4th? He says, I don't know.
Right.
Something I have for Nick.
Right.
That's not anything about voices, teachers, students out to get me. It is something I have for Nick.
Right. I think that's
his motivation.
Right.
5 days before.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's probably right.
So on the next one, this is going to be page 33, Your Honor. So they're upset because Mandy and Colt have sent messages to Nick and he's not responding.
Yeah.
And they're upset about it.
Right.
So like how the fuck are they not responding? Like it's just a slow-ass company saying how, whatever those words are.
Something better to do.
Because like if I'm in prison, I'm writing back every single one of them.
Right.
And then the next thing he says is, I'll fix this, all of this, just give me a few days.
Right.
How? I'll surprise you. And at the bottom of that page, he says, sorry if I seem distant. I had to clean up a few things. The 4th is indeed approaching quickly.
Right.
So he's upset that Nick Cruz is not responding to him.
Right.
And he's upset too. And he says, I'll fix this in a couple of days.
Right.
Then on page 34, he says, again, this is the September 2nd, so now we're 2 days out. Mandy, I can't wait. 3 days, Nick is going to be in love with us. Surprise. LMKAO, laughing my something ass off.
Yeah, I don't know what the K is for.
So again, this is so Nick will be in love with him.
Right.
No mention about people at the school conspiring against him, teachers are going to get him on that day. It is all to get Nick Cruz's attention.
Right. You and I have been agreeing about this for about an hour.
Yes,
now.
sir.
Okay. I'm just saying.
I'm just piling on.
I know, you are. I get that. But I'm just saying, you realize we're agreeing over and over and over
Absolutely.
again. Okay.
Page 36. My love for Nick has formed into something in which I can find no other resort that can prove my love and affection towards him. I mean, that's pretty much it right there, isn't it?
Yep.
July the 4th. Let's go to page 40. Mandy says, also, I don't mean to pry, but why did you pick September 4th to do something? And he says, 4. Nick chose the 14th. Because the shooting at Parkland was on February 14th.
Okay. I vaguely remember that.
And then on page 41, he says, he showed a clip of somebody running. He says, me as running away from the police on the 4th. And he says, fun fact, September 4th is a Wednesday, same weekday that was on February 14th.
Right.
The day Nick Cruz did it.
Yep.
Did you remember Colt telling investigators that he called a suicide hotline in the bathroom immediately before the shooting?
No, I don't remember that.
You don't remember that?
No.
You wouldn't know this. I don't think you do. Did you get a copy of his phone records?
I don't think I did. There was some texts that were encrypted, and then the Discord, but I don't know if I have the phone records.
And even if you did, those things are so voluminous already.
They're hard to read. Yeah.
Just to let you know, did you know that that's a lie? He never called the suicide hotline while he was in the bathroom.
Yeah, he never told me he did, so I didn't remember.
Investigators he did.
Right, I didn't remember he told investigators that, but I have no reason to doubt that he did if you say he did.
Did you know that James Holmes did that?
No.
That he went out to his car right before he came back into the... He went into the theater, then went back out to his car to get ready and go back in, and while he was out there, he called a suicide hotline. Did you know that?
No.
Okay. Did you know that Colt did know that?
I'm sure he did.
Okay. Just pull up, Your Honor, this is going to be the same Discord, page 24. So he says he's talking about James Holmes. Dude, toward the bottom, dude, he's like the forgotten mass shooter. He called a hotline right before he did it, too. Okay. So Colt knows that about James Holmes.
Yeah, not surprising.
When Colt is being interviewed by the investigators the day of the shooting, he has the mental wherewithal to lie. Tell them he did the same thing James Holmes did that he actually didn't do.
Right.
Again, another Easter egg for fans of James Holmes to discover.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that way. Again, since I didn't go down that rabbit hole, I mean, I wouldn't have known these things. But the way that you're framing it and characterizing it, I mean, it makes sense.
And it makes sense with what you know about the TCC community.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We'll talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah,
sure. We'll go through a few more of these things.
Okay.
Now, Colt told investigators he blacked out for the actual shooting.
Right.
Okay. Did he tell you that?
I don't recall specifically. I mean, people do when they do something like that. It's not unusual for their memory to be spotty about it, but I don't remember him specifically telling me he blacked out.
Okay. Because you made no mention of it in your report.
Yeah, I don't think I put too much detail about what he told me about the actual shooting. But
that doesn't seem to be a big deal about if he blacked out or not. When you're talking about his mental state.
Again, I've talked to lots of people who've done terrible things, and it's not unusual for them to say that they blacked out or don't remember parts of it. So if he had told me that, I would not find that to be inconsistent or particularly noteworthy.
Okay. So you don't think it's noteworthy?
It wouldn't have been surprising, again, because it's not uncommon for people who have done things that are problematic like this to not remember pieces of it. So if he had said that, I wouldn't have put too much into it.
Okay. Now, when he describes it, he uses some strange words for a 14-year-old.
Right.
I want to play. This is going to be at the school, 8:11 to 8:27.
Okay.
Where's the bathroom that your book bag
I
is in?
think it's down there. I completely just became decentralized through all of it. I came back and looked at them up on the floor.
I completely just became decentralized through all of it.
Yeah.
That's a strange word.
It's an odd word to use. Yeah.
Did you know he used that word before?
I was not aware of that.
In fact, he tells investigators that his email is decentralized declivity.
Right. I did remember that. Yeah. Or declivity decentralized. I think it was the other way around. But because they asked him what declivity meant, and he said he didn't know.
He says he blacked out during the shooting and uses the word decentralized.
Right.
But he had the wherewithal and the forethought to, before the shooting ever happened, to make an email account with that same word in it.
Yes.
It's almost like he can predict the future. And by I'm not predicting the shooting because we know he was planning that.
Right.
But predicting the blacking out part.
Potentially, again, yeah. I mean, I don't know if he knows what the word means, but
I think he goes on throughout his interviews and says phrases, transformed into a state of psychosis.
Right.
Says that twice.
Yeah.
Almost a blackout state of mania psychosis. He says that once.
Right, that's not a thing.
And one time he says, like psychosis state of blackout, because that's an actual thing that people can have. Sounds kind of pre-thought out, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, he's clearly, there's no question that he's researched mental disorders.
But it seems like he already has those things ready to say.
Yeah. But again, whatever the blackout mania psychosis, I mean, that's not a term I would ever use, so I'm not sure what he was referring to. But you're right. I mean, it seems as though that was teed up.
Yeah. And again, that's the same thing that Cruz said when he was arrested. We've already shown that Discord.
Okay.
So he's now setting up the blackout Nick Cruz Easter egg.
Right.
To do right after.
Yeah. And, again, since I didn't go down the rabbit hole with them, it's interesting when you think of it. I think you're probably right. And again, not surprising the way that he had disappeared into this true crime community. It seems like something somebody would do.
Yeah. So you do know the basic synopsis of the shooting. He's in a bathroom.
Right.
He comes out of the bathroom, goes to one door, it's locked, goes to the next door, goes in, shoots the room, runs back down the hallway, shoots some people going down the hallway, and he's arrested at the end of the hallway.
Right. Law enforcement had put together a PowerPoint timeline that was really helpful for me to kind of orient. I didn't realize how quickly it all went down until I watched that.
And he tells investigators that he was in the bathroom, he blacks out, and when he comes to, he's on the floor in custody.
Right.
He doesn't remember anything in the middle.
Right.
And that's what he describes to them.
Right.
But that's not what he says on jail calls the next month with his mom. And this is going to be on October 21st, 8:24 p.m. from 10 minute 10 second to 12 minute 14 second.
Article from ABC News. Do you want me to read this? Okay. It says, In a tragic incident that unfolded on September 4th, Colt Gray is accused of fatally shooting 2 students and 2 teachers. Blah, blah, blah. The GDI testified in court-only states detailing surveillance footage that revealed Gray's unsettling tactics as he concealed a long gun he was in a poster board resembling a school project while boarding the school bus. The GDI agent recounted that on the morning of the shooting, Colt Gray rode the bus with a weapon hidden from view. After arriving at school, he reportedly left a notebook on his math desk that outlined the plan for the shooting, just like you said the other day, including estimated casualty counts and sketching of the classroom layout. Gray then proceeded to the restroom, emerged with gloves on and the poster board covering the AR-15 style rifle, which was allegedly tried to conceal. As he attempted to re into the classroom, a classmate spotted him through the door's window, prompting her to alert the teacher and initiate a lockdown. So apparently they talked about how you left that notebook out on your desk. So that's crazy to me how you were just like putting it out there and everybody was just something oblivious, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, and the rest is nothing there. Let's just talk about the shooting part.
Okay, well, that part I can account for. One of the first things I told you left here wasn't a student, it was the teacher who looked at me through the window. And the door was open, I could easily enter, but I just turned and...
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were locked out.
Seems to me he now has pretty clear memory of what happened.
Right.
Okay. And there's another call the next month on November 11th. This is 8:25 p.m. from 8:53 to 9:46.
You want me to do the posts first?
Yeah.
Because there's a bunch of them.
Actually, no, the article, yeah.
You do the articles? Okay.
You coming Tuesday again?
Duh.
Yeah.
You know it. Okay, the first one. One second. It says Apalachee survivor recounts the moment that shooting suspect came banging frantically on the classroom door. What?
No, that's bullshit.
What the fuck? Ashland Dosa. You heard the one called me Ashland?
No, but I did not. I know for sure I didn't bang on that fucking door. That was probably the gunshots in the other room.
Probably.
Again, he does have memory of that. He did not black out.
Right, he never represented to me that he had blacked out. When we discussed the incident, there was never any indication that he didn't remember.
No, he told
Investigators. Yeah. I'm just pointing out that
and
that's
Nick
not
Gray
what
for Nick Cruz fans.
Sure.
Okay.
Seems like, yeah.
So let's go into the TCC a little bit.
Sure.
You're familiar with it, heard about it from Colt. Did he tell you about it?
He told me about his involvement in it, and then I did a little poking around.
I was going to say you also looked into it.
Yeah, I wanted to know something about it.
What did you look at? What did you find?
I knew some things online. CNN did a thing about it recently. I watched that. There was actually an article, I think, that the state provided.
The one about Peter Smith?
Yeah, that one. So that was interesting. And then just kind of poking around online, trying to find out what I could about like what this was. And
so basically help the judge understand it's an internet subculture? Yeah,
it's a group, mostly teenagers and young adults, who are obsessed with these school shooters to the point that it becomes, obsessed is the best word, but it becomes kind of all engrossing, even sexualized at times. It's pretty disturbing.
What are some of the activities that these?
They do a lot of research. They do a lot of trying to find information and media that have to do, you can obtain a certain level of credibility by having information other people don't have. The people in the community tend to focus on one or another person. Sometimes they'll shift like Colt did. And then, he was speaking with Caitlin. Caitlin was obsessed with Adam Lanza. Mandy was clearly obsessed with Nick Cruz, as was he. And that's kind of typical for how it goes. But again, the relationships become, there's an idealization of the shooters. There's a minimization of the impact on the community and on the victims. And then there's almost like I can't think of a good way to describe it, but almost like a wanting to be similar, sort of a joining or wanting to be, with the person or recognized by the person. As I said, even sometimes it became sexualized in some of the texts. I think I put this in the report between Mandy and Colt. They even talked about doing various sex acts with Nick Cruz if they ever got there. And that's kind of the level of obsession and intensity that you see. And in the messages with Caitlin, it was very similar. Those were the two sets that I focused on.
And they also, they create like fan art.
Oh yeah, they create art. They make like little clips. Like if you look at the attachments in Discord, there's a lot of like short videos. I mean, there's this one of Nick Cruz like, running into the school that's there over and over again. They tend to repeat, but then there's also like memes and fan art and animations and stuff like that people will make. Including, like, they'll take a photo that's available in the media and then make a meme out of it.
On a psychological level, does participating in this community, does it give the people in it like a sense of social connectedness?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, it's dysfunctional,
right?
But I think there's a piece of it where people kind of are drawn to it. It's mostly kind of disaffected, damaged people. I mean, I don't think there's any super high functioning people that are spending their time doing this, and the people that are in it are doing it. I think Colt talked about one person he was speaking with where he'd spent like 30 hours at a time online. He said he was up for 3 days before the incident talking to Mandy, and they were talking about Nick Cruz, and so that level of, it almost substitutes. I think one of the things that I said in the report is that his entire social world was happening on Discord. It wasn't happening out here with us. It was happening in this internet space where the things that these attributes that these school shooters have are valued and idolized, and people get these really kind of twisted connections to these people, and sometimes I think probably in the vast majority of them, because there's hundreds of thousands of people on this, and most of them are not doing school shootings, but there are a significant number that have come out of the true crime community who have done things, and there are examples. I think Mr. Smith had some examples in his article as well. So it does happen. It is something that happens as a result of the fixation and obsession that these people have that are involved in the true crime community.
Okay. And there's not only with the emotional appeal, there's an aesthetic appeal that these things are edgy and cool, and that's kind of what appeals people to young kids to it.
I think sometimes it starts as like, and it's because there's no shortage of interest in true crime. I think Headline News runs Forensic Files like 24 hours a day, so there's people out there watching this stuff. But there's people that have kind of an interest in it because they're actually interested in kind of how people's minds work, and then there's people that kind of go at next level and start to identify as opposed to just being interested. Someone like myself, I'm in the forensic psychology business, and so I'm interested in why people do things the way that they do, but I don't get obsessed with them or want to emulate them. So there's a difference between people that are out there in the community that are just interested in this and people that kind of maybe start there, but then kind of go into this online space, and particularly if you're somebody who's already kind of an outcast, already kind of disaffected, already kind of functioning not at a great level, to be drawn into this and then and be able to, kind of become a different person in there, and get credibility and get admiration and get friends to talk to. I think there's some value in that. Again, the danger is, and it is danger, is that something like this would happen. So, but I think that, I don't claim to be an expert on the TCC, but that's how, I needed to understand what was going on.
We have Peter Smith's going to testify.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so you're set. No, but I needed to be able to understand kind of what was going on. It's one of the reasons I tried to get in touch with, I had phone numbers for Mandy and Caitlin, and I tried to reach out to both of them because I wanted to talk to somebody else that was in there, just to kind of hear what they had to say, but neither one of them talked to me, so.
Do they, members of this community, do they have like inside jokes, associated hashtags?
Oh, yeah.
And do they assign significance to certain numbers, symbols, emojis, things like that?
Yeah, there's all kinds of their own sort of modes of communication, hashtags and stuff like that they use.
And these obscure symbols and imagery, they're usually only understood by them, not for the outside world.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to just go and read the messages, there would be some things that you probably wouldn't get. And then there'd be, there's some that's pretty clear. Okay. So.
And is some of the content, like, it's a dark subject, but is some of it kind of on face, like cute little things that they would do?
I think that's what they're shooting for, because there are things they referred, cute is a word that Mandy and Colt both used to describe Nick Cruz repeatedly. So, and I guess there are pictures out there of him smiling or, whatever, and those are some of the ones that got memed. So,
have you ever heard the phrase mimetic participatory violence?
I have, but yeah, I've heard that. I'm blocking on what it means. But
well, we've got this community,
right?
And the members research the memes of past shooters,
right?
Okay, and then they participate and commit their own shooting. But when they do, they leave behind that same meme content from other shooters.
Right. Mimetic meaning based on memes, which is based on the things that we're going. Yeah, it's coming back. So
they research and find out all this stuff about the people in the true crimes community, the TCC generate in the door. Right. And then when they're doing their own act of violence, they put these Easter eggs in for those members of the community will then see them.
Right.
Okay. And by that way, they can gain fame and status within the community.
Right.
Okay. And I think we talked about malingering earlier. Most people talk about malingering, the primary motivation being to get out of trouble. But we talked about secondary motivations.
Right.
And some of these lies and the malingering, if they're Easter eggs, that would be the secondary motivation to gain status within the TCC community.
Right. If anyone ever decided to start researching him, they might put those things together.
Right. Let's go back to Discord. We're going to go back to, this is the F-bomb one from 2023.
Okay.
I'm going to do page 22 and 23. So this is him. He's talking to Sniggles again from earlier. And again, this is 2 years before. And they're talking about, God, I wish we could commit it together. And the next, see what I'm looking for. Okay, there it is. Okay. So God, I wish we could commit it together. God, people making edits of us would be fucking strange. So he's already thinking that.
Right.
Way back 2 years before the shooting, he's thinking, do the shooting so that we can get the edits.
Seems like.
And then on page 23, I want to make history. To put it short, I want people to remember the pain I caused and research me for hours.
Yep.
So if this is his primary motivation,
right?
Nick's love, fame, research edits within the TCC community.
Right.
Fame within them.
Sure.
Okay. he laid those Easter eggs, a lot of them, the blacking out like Nick, calling the hotline like James Holmes, purple gloves like
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Thank you. All of these things that he said, there were lies, that he said in his interview after the shooting was laying of these Easter eggs.
It seems like.
Seems like. So if his ultimate goal is fame within the TCC, the shooting wasn't the final step in that plan. Because he continued the plan after the shooting.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, it seems like.
No further questions?
Redirect. I'd like to get the witness done before we take our lunch break. Yes, sir.
So, obviously, Colt was involved very much in his social media with this work, right?
Clearly.
Okay. How does that relate directly to the issues that he's facing and his diagnostic issues, his depressive issues, PTSD? How does interaction with that community relate to his mental health issues?
Well, I think, people that have those kinds of issues, that have I guess could be depression, anxiety, but more like have that kind of history, feeling disaffected, isolated, are the exact people that end up in there. And so I think it's not surprising that he ended up in there, given the issues that he had. People with those issues don't end up in there sometimes too, but I think if you wanted to make a connection, it would be because of the way that he was in the world, and kind of his prior experiences that had kind of isolated him to this point where he then goes into the computer and then his whole world is in there. And that's what I think happened.
Do children his age have a tendency to mimic those around them in the community they want to be a part of?
They can, sure.
When they're 13, 12, 13, and 14, how reasonable is it to assume they want to be accepted?
Well, I think most people do. I think teenagers and early adolescence, I think that's a period of time where kids are real sensitive to that kind of thing.
Well, it's fair to say that Colt, for a lot of years, felt as though he wasn't accepted and a part of his family because of the way the troubles and the chaos went.
I think that's a fair characterization.
And I believe when you were talking earlier, you said that when he dug down into this community, he kind of put himself in his own world.
Right.
Okay. Can you describe a bit of the world he was creating from what you've been over with Mr. Smith and what you've interviewed with him and his structure in your analysis from both his mother's information, from his background, his development,
okay,
and what he has given you in the sort of 4 meetings that you had with him,
yeah,
plus what's been discussed with his interaction with this court with Mr. Smith? Can you kind of give us an overview of how all that fits together in his personality and his development?
I can try. I think, again, if you look at somebody's lifespan, if you look at their development, you look at the experiences they've had, and you're trying to get a sense of how somebody came to be where they are at a certain point in time, I think when I started researching, or not researching, when I started evaluating, Colt, and started kind of listening to things that he was saying and looking at aspects of his history, looking at his online presence, then eventually, and the thing that was most useful talking to his mom was, she talked a little bit about his symptoms. I got some of his, background history, certainly her slant on it. But it's not surprising, because I think people that are, maybe kind of disaffected, isolated, with poor supports, not much interaction in the world, in the community, who are a little odd to begin with, and he's an odd kid, and then developed these kind of depressive and anxiety symptoms. I think to get into a community like that, where you're with a bunch of other people that are similarly kind of disaffected, outcasts, kind of lonely people, and you can get a certain amount of credibility in there, I think it kind of draws you in, because in that world you can be somebody that's not lonely and disaffected and isolated. You can be somebody who's connected, and you can be somebody who's got a social world and who has sources of self-esteem. I mean, it's extraordinarily dysfunctional, but it makes sense, quotes added, that somebody of his kind of psychological makeup at his age might end up in that space.
Is it possible that somebody jumping on the bandwagon of following through the analysis of school shooters can join in the conversation, can present themselves as being a part of this without ever really having a plan to do anything?
Well, I think, again, there are thousands of people in this, and not all of them are doing shootings. So, yeah, it's possible. It's not what happened in this case, but certainly, not everybody that's involved in the true crime community ends up doing something like this.
We've got a significant period of time from 2023 and 2024, and we're looking at the separate accounts, F-bomb and occasional crime. In 2023, at that point when he was making the interchange as F-bomb with another friend,
right,
was he in a position to actually formulate a plan, or is it possible that, or more probable at that stage, that this was more a banter interaction, just being a part of the community?
That's the way he characterized it. I mean, I don't know what his capabilities were at that time. I don't know if he had access to weapons, or was enrolled in a school where could have reasonably done something like that. Certainly, he was at least fantasizing about it and talking about it, and trying to use it to get attention from people in that community.
And he was getting a significant attention response, possibly.
Seems like.
Now, if someone is on the cusp of developing a paranoia syndrome, like we've been discussing with Colt,
right,
wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that once, say, the FBI contacted him, that would heighten his paranoid response, and that's why he would take down accounts, destroy accounts, and do other steps? Not necessarily that he was planning something, but the paranoia was triggering, and he was responding to the circumstances around him.
It could be an element of it. Certainly, if you had had an experience with the FBI, being worried about having another one, that has a certain realistic aspect to it. I mean, it doesn't mean it can't also be, paranoid and unreasonable, but if the FBI has already visited your house, to be concerned that they might visit again if they saw similar material is not really delusional.
Now, you indicated that you really didn't believe the delusional comments that he made about the black vans watching anything but that.
Right, and yeah.
How does paranoia manifest if it's not in delusional suspicions like that?
Again, I think he conflates paranoia and anxiety. I think he's anxious. He's an anxious kid who spends a lot of time worrying about things. Some of the time when he was saying paranoia, and I pointed this out a few times in the report, he was really conflating it with anxiety. What he was talking about was not paranoia. I think there were elements of paranoia. I don't think it was the primary thing that was going on with him. I think the anxiety and the depression were the primary things that were going on with him. I think there was some level of paranoia. I don't necessarily think he was hallucinating the way that he's described it. But I think the paranoia, again, could have directed some of his behavior. But again, there was a realistic basis for it as well.
And the fact of the anxiety related to the FBI visit to his home, that would have an impact on his behavior, right?
Well, one would think it would. One would think it would change one's behavior, but it would also make somebody a little more alert, being aware that people are monitoring, and might be paying attention to what you're actually saying on Discord. He didn't seem to be, because these Discord messages are available, he wasn't destroying those. I'm not sure what was on these SD cards that he was destroying, because we have the messages and we have all the stuff that he said on the messages, so he wasn't covering his footprint that well.
Is it possible he didn't actually destroy it?
It's possible, yeah. I didn't see him do it, and I don't believe they found any crushed up SD cards.
Children, when they're growing up, oftentimes have heroes, don't they?
Sure.
Is that a normal developmental manifestation?
Yes.
And generally, parents are able to guide children as to what kind of heroes they look at and follow, right?
Right.
Did that happen in this case? Did
No.
he get guidance from his family?
Didn't seem like, no. It seemed like he was pretty much on his own, in his own little world from a pretty young age.
So when he gets into these discord in the true crime community, is he looking at some way to not only fit in, but have a hero?
It seems like, it was at least that, again, because it tipped over into, obsession. But looking up to, it seems odd that this is who you would pick to look up to. It makes sense that you would feel a certain kinship with somebody else who was disaffected and lonely, but there's lots of disaffected and lonely people that don't do these things. I think the explanation for getting into the true crime community is it kind of gets merged. I think maybe sometimes people start innocently just really actually being interested, and then they get into this community, and then they find this place where they can be accepted, and then they start talking about, fantasizing about these things or glorifying the things. That's a major piece of it, is the kind of glorifying and idealizing the shooters and minimizing the impact on the victims and minimizing the aftermath, and then idolizing them in a way. Again, it probably doesn't make sense to the average person, but I think if you're looking for a way to belong, you can end up in a healthy way to belong, or you can end up in an extraordinarily dysfunctional way to belong. And I think that's what happens to the people that get mired in this true crime community. I think Colt even had an inkling that it was unhealthy, because he mentioned 2 people he used to talk to, and he talked about them getting better. He said, well, Caitlin got better. She got therapy, and she doesn't do this anymore. And Calvin was the other one, got therapy and got better. And I think Calvin was even trying to get him to quit, being in there, recognizing it was dysfunctional.
And given your testing and talking to Colt, would you say that he was emotionally appropriately developed for a 14-year-old, 15-year-old when you were talking to him?
No, he didn't seem to be. I think his emotional development was really problematic. He was missing a lot of the things that kids get when they're growing up in terms of, attachments and stability and peer relationships and all of those things, and, healthy parents that are nurturing and present and not having a lot of their own issues and not neglecting them and not abusing them. So there was a lot of things that occurred in his childhood that were abnormal, or that were not normal, not usual, and stunted his development kind of emotionally and interpersonally. And I think that, kind of, again, when you think of it that way, the idea that he would have found himself kind of immersed in this true crime community and overvaluing these other disaffected people, even though they had done these horrible things, I don't want to say it makes sense, but you can kind of see how one got from point A to point B.
The similarities to some of the other shooters that Mr. Smith was alluding to, how does that play in his trying to feel a part of the community, if that was the goal, or how does that play into satisfying whatever hole he had in him in creating this world?
Well, again, you've created now kind of a mythology around yourself, because you've done this thing, and you've, shown a similarity to these other people, and then, it creates a certain amount of status for you in a again, extraordinarily dysfunctional way. But again, it's this, I'm going to do something that's going to, stand out. I'm going to do something that people are going to notice. I'm going to do something that Nick's going to notice, as kind of twisted as that is, it is an attempt to belong in an extraordinarily problematic way.
Is it safe to say that it did fill a hole that he's been trying to fill?
I think so.
Does that mean that he is at a point that he can't be treated and brought back to some level of normalcy?
Well, I mean, as I was saying earlier, when you're talking about kids that are teens and adolescents, even when they get themselves into problematic places, the fact that their brains aren't fully developed and their personalities and characters are not fully developed. Clearly, he was immersed in this. Clearly, he was obsessed with this, and clearly, he was guiding a lot of his behavior at getting attention and credibility in this community. But the idea that you could, at age 14, 15, 16, that you would kind of say there's nothing you can do with somebody whose brain and personality and character are still in a state of flux, are still developing, and also if they haven't had, kind of a realistic shot at treatment. I think to just say at this age we know it's pointless kind of ignores how development works.
And if Colt were exposed to something other than this community or taken out of this community, how do you think that would impact his emotional growth going forward?
Well, I mean, if he could really get himself extricated from it and really kind of work on pro-social interpersonal interactions and learn how to cope with things in a healthy way and learn how to manage the feelings that he has, and process the things that he understands, certainly you could find a different way of relating.
Tell me a little bit about antisocial disorder and why you think it may not be applicable.
Again, he's doing a lot of things in the aftermath. There's doing a lot of lying and the malingering, but those are not necessarily indicative of an antisocial personality organization. I mean, certainly he does some things that could certainly lead to that. I mean, he's clearly been able to do things that disregard the rights of others. He's clearly been able to do things that had an extremely adverse impact on the lives of others. Appears maybe remorseful, maybe not. I can see how that would make people think he was on a trajectory like that, but there was not a lot of other kinds of things that you usually see with conduct disorder and so forth kind of developing, forward. I think if you, look at the things that he did in this instance, I don't know that it necessarily captures the entirety of his personality. Again, I can't say. Certainly there was a lot of problematic stuff, but to say that there's absolutely nothing you can do or you shouldn't give it a try or, we're just going to give up now, knowing, again, what I know about brain and personality and character development, seems like, it's certainly one way to go, but it seems like it ignores, what we know about people's ability to make change, particularly at a period, when they're still developing. I mean, if we were talking about somebody that was 27, 28, 29 or older, I would be much less optimistic.
Now, there's been some comment about his blank effect, the fact that he doesn't seem to be overly emotional and showing remorse. Is it possible that someone who is not in a normal social environment may not know the nonverbal cues to trigger that so others will understand what they're feeling?
I suppose so, but again, it's, there's a certain amount of social stuff that you get from modeling, and there's a certain amount of stuff that's just kind of how you're wired up. If you're not wired up to be a particularly emotional person, then that's the way you're going to come across. I think it's hard to tell with him. I mean, I think there's, again, evidence to suggest that he did know, and when he communicated remorse, maybe he was or was not remorseful, and it was hard to tell. I couldn't speculate, to be honest with you. I know I just talked around in circles a bit there, but it's hard to know.
Were you aware that he wrote apology notes?
I did. I saw them.
At this point, given everything you and Mr. Smith have discussed, do you still maintain your recommendation in your report?
I still think there's, if you look at him, certainly the exposition from the state and all of the problematic stuff he was doing, I was aware of all the problematic stuff he was doing in the true crime community. I think it would be, clinically, I would want to get him out of that milieu and see if you could address things to kind of maybe restructure his personality in a more healthy, better coping sort of way. It's going to be a big job, but I think it's not something that age 14, 15, 16 you can say, well, there's no point.
Thank you. That's all I have, Judge.
Is there any recross?
Just a second, Your Honor. Good question, Your Honor.
All right. Witness may be excused.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Your Honor.